We are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, August 23rd. I couldn't remember already. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher, and we are brought to you by OddsShopper. We've got everything to talk about today. Literally, 15-game DK slate. There's so much going on. A lot of things that we'll be able to draw a quick line through. A couple others, not so much. So before we get started, because we got a big one here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how did you enjoy yesterday's awful slate?
I didn't because I stacked, and that was very key to not winning yesterday.
Yes, it was. Did you see who or what won yesterday's tournament?
I saw that it wasn't a stacked lineup.
Not only did that guy single bullet win the relay throw, he also single bullet won the four-seamer and the mini-max yesterday.
I imagine that would be fun.
Yeah. So there's that. That happened. So congratulations to whoever the hell that was for hitting the big one yesterday. That dude played I assume $18 worth of lineups yesterday and came out 100K plus to the good.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Yesterday was just frustrating in general. I know initially I was getting to a lot of the Phillies. Then they decided to late start despite no rain, so I just X'd them out because I didn't know what the hell they were doing. They ended up being decent, they hit a few home runs, but then I ended up getting a ton of Dodgers. I had a lot of Braves too, I had a ton of Dodgers, and so no stack does well the entire
How good
day.
did you feel?
I was I didn't really love the Dodgers against Lauer, but if I'm going to get the Dodgers knowing that no other team did well, this could be fun. And then they also sucked.
Yeah, so I see that everybody's laying an egg. I have 45% in the aggregate Dodgers. And I was just okay, they barely even have to participate in this game to be decent. And if they score 6 runs, I'm probably at the top. And then I wake up and I see the crisp goose egg next to their name. And I'm just okay, everything sucks. And obviously everything sucked.
Yep. Yeah, pitching was good. Actually, pitching wasn't good.
It should be.
So, pitching was good, but for me, I know the reason why, but it was still just really annoying. I ended up with a lot of Adam Oller because I just played so much Braves and Dodgers, and so I was playing just chalk hitting, and so I ended up with a lot of him. Plus, I had X Syndergaard out of my player pool. I ended up with way more Oller than I expected, and way more Drew Smiley than I expected. Smiley went well. Oller went as expected.
Yeah. I ended up a little bit heavier on Oller as well, but if you didn't have Montgomery, it didn't really matter. The old complete game shutout is probably going to get you there most times when you're putting up 40 fantasy points as a pitcher.
As someone who hates the Yankees, I am thoroughly enjoying Jordan Montgomery just dominating with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I still don't really understand that one. Do you?
I have no idea what that trade was. We were kind of talking about it, people me and people in chat today. Montgomery, has certainly been better with the Cardinals. He's getting more strikeouts. He's been really good from a DFS standpoint. He was good this year with the Yankees, just because his strikeouts were down and he wasn't a great DFS option. He was pitching well for the Yankees. So this isn't the Yankees got rid of him and then he went and started pitching well. He was already pitching well and they traded him for reasons. And then now he's just pitching better because the Cardinals also kind of changed the way he's pitching and he's getting more strikeouts, but he was having a good year regardless.
Yeah, it didn't really feel like a spot where they needed to trade for a bat.
That isn't going to play. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it doesn't. I can't wrap my head around it. It didn't make sense then. Certainly doesn't make sense now. Congrats to Montgomery for powering through it, I guess. It's just weird. I wonder if he's a horrible person or something.
I've never heard anything negative about it, but I have no idea.
Maybe he's just a gigantic asshole and they needed to just get him out of there.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard anything like that. And also, it's the Yankees. They've dealt with their share, but... Yeah.
Well, you deal with your share when you're the Yankees if you're the tippy top too. Yeah. Right. It's different for A-Rod. Anyway, I got nothing else here. We have everything to get through. Full 15 games. Lots to talk about. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Kicking it off with said Yankees. Yankees and Mets. 4.6 run implied total for the Yanks. 4.2 for the Mets. Frankie Montas and Taijuan Walker. This is a spot where neither pitcher is getting any ownership. I've got a little bit more interest in Montas at no ownership. particularly at 7,900. Do you see this as a spot where you're going to be getting any pitching?
Probably not. There's just so much good pitching on this slate, and of the top tier pitchers, a few of them aren't really getting that much ownership, typically because they have a difficult matchup. But I just think that you can get contrarian, really good pitchers. Montas has certainly struggled with the Yankees. I don't want to read into that too much because overall he is a good pitcher, but it's also a difficult matchup against the Mets. I don't anticipate really getting too much of him.
Yeah, I got to 8% Montas on my crunch, so nothing too crazy, just sort of a middle of the pack, perfectly acceptable arm. We'll talk about a pivot in that area a little bit later.
So I guess so that is one. I guess that is the case that you could make for Montas. That range in salary, there's a lot of good pitchers tonight, but they're mostly 9K plus. That like 8K ish range. You have Corey Kluber getting ownership. You have Pablo Lopez getting ownership. Basically nobody else. And I think both of those guys should be getting ownership. They should be the two most popular guys in that range. But if you're playing like popular hitters and you need a pitcher in that range and don't want to go to one of those guys, you could, I guess, make the case for a 2% on Montas.
Yeah, that's my only case really. It's just I think all those guys look similar. Is he a half step behind them? Yeah. Is a half step 18-1 in ownership? No.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, like for example, I have Lopez half a point ahead of Kluber, and then Kluber 2 points ahead of Montas. So like clearly Montas isn't going to show up in that many lineups, but when you talk range of outcomes, like he's still going to beat them a high enough percentage of the time.
We could either start with the number 9 stack from the top stack tool or the number 10 team. One of these is actually getting some ownership. That's mostly going to Aaron Judge and Benintendi. So I guess we'll start Yankees 10th in top stack, 10th in ownership. Are you stacking the Yankees against Walker?
I don't hate it, but I doubt that I get to too much of it. I think the ownership pretty much makes sense here. It is nice because, like you said, Aaron Judge is the majority of that ownership. He's at 10%. That's actually down a little bit from this morning. Benintendi's up to about 10% as well, which is up from this morning. You have Oswaldo Cabrera, who's still min price, and then everybody else is just like 2% or lower. So in the aggregate, if you 5-man stack this team, you're getting a pretty low-owned team that does have a lot of power. You're facing a pitcher in Walker who's pretty average. He's certainly not a bad pitcher. He's not somebody I'm going out of my way typically to target, but only an 18.5% strikeout percentage, 4.05 xFIP this year. Certainly not a pitcher that I would shy away from with Yankees bats. The biggest issue for me, though, is just this is a 15-game slate. You're going to have a lot of really good, appealing spots to get to where the Yankees kind of just get pushed down a little bit.
All righty. What about on the opposite side here? Since the Mets are basically tied with the Yankees in top stack odds, they are actually getting no ownership at all. Do you want any Mets against Montas?
Not really. Again, it's kind of just a slate size thing for me. If you wanted to make a case for the Mets, I think it would be that they have plenty of left-handed power in Yankee Stadium, which we know plays up left-handed power. Montas has certainly been struggling recently. Maybe it's health related. I have no idea. I think it's more likely just random small sample size things that are being magnified because he was just traded to the Yankees and has been sucking since getting there. But so far this year, he has allowed a 178 expected ISO to lefties. He has only struck out 20.8% of lefties compared to 26.8% of righties. So he has kind of struggled in this split. And now you are getting him in Yankee Stadium against Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Vogelbach, McNeil, Beatty. These guys all have power and can do damage. If this were a 6, 7, 8 game slate, I think I would be able to argue for the Mets a little bit stronger than I can now. Now it's more so just if I happen to see I have Met stacks, I'm going to be happy about that because they are not getting ownership and I think they do have a high ceiling, but there's just so many teams on this slate that it's hard to say their priority.
Anything else that we need to touch on here?
I don't think so.
On to your Orioles, 3.5 run implied total against the White Sox, 3.9 implied total there. Austin Voth and Dylan Cease going in this one. And we finally have a pitcher. Well, I don't know why I said finally. This is game number 2. We have a pitcher that is pulling ownership, 15%, in fact, going to Cease at 10K today, going up against your Orioles. And I can't really disagree with it. I think Cease's ownership is perfectly reasonable in this 10K range. I think the top is just loaded from a pitching perspective. And we're seeing that in the ownership as well.
Yeah, I think that Cease is a good option. Greg and I talked about him a bit this morning as somebody that maybe was going a little bit under-owned relative to the other top-tier pitchers because he does have the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He does have a decent matchup with the Orioles. You know, it's not as good as like Carlos Rodon's matchup against the Tigers. The Orioles active roster now has a 105 WRC plus, like a 22.5% strikeout percentage. They're in Baltimore, which it's relatively, it's kind of warm. It's like low 80s today. And you do have some solid left-handed power in this lineup. 3.5 implied run total for Baltimore compared to like Minnesota's at 2.6 against Verlander. The Tigers against Rodon are at 3. So I understand why he's not projecting quite as well and why the ownership's a little bit lower. But at the same time, if you look at the top 2 pitcher percentages, Carlos Rodon leads the way at 20%, Ray's at 19, Verlander at 17, Burns at 16, and Cease at 16. But Cease is getting like half the ownership of Rodon and less than half the ownership of Ray, despite not being that far behind them in top 2 pitcher percentage.
Yeah, I think he looks. I ended up getting to 18% on my first run. I think he looks good. I think you could kind of just pick whatever you want in those top guys, and it's all basically the same. It's more of an ownership decision than a like who I actually like, because I think all of those guys should be pulling ownership. Happy to get Cease. I think everybody's just kind of pretty blurry at the top today. What about your boy Austin Voth?
I think he's a better real life pitcher than he gets credit for. I think I know I've mentioned it this morning. I think I've mentioned it on previous shows, but as a starter this year, which is essentially his time with Baltimore because he was working out of the bullpen with the Nats earlier in the year, he struck out 22.5% of hitters with a 3.82 xFIP, 3.28 FIP, 2.76 ERA, less than 1 home run per 9 innings. He's been a solid pitcher, and he hasn't been that good over the course of his career, but I actually buy into what he's done with the Orioles because he's come out and said that he came to Baltimore, they gave him a bunch of data, a bunch of information that he didn't know existed, had never seen before, changed what he was doing, and you're seeing the results. From a DFS standpoint, I still think it's difficult to really want to get there. 1, because this is just a massive slate with a ton of good pitching. 2, the Orioles typically are not having him go particularly deep into games. Typically he gets, his 5, maybe 6 innings, and then it's just like, all right, we're going to get to the good bullpen. So you're typically seeing like 70, 80 pitches from him. So on a slate of this size, I think the ceiling may be a little bit capped. At 6,300, he's an okay point per dollar option, but I think realistically, you're just not going to need to get to him all that much.
Yeah, I got 6% just sort of randomly as a pay down option, which feels fine. Good enough strikeout matchup, but certainly not a priority in comparison to everybody else on this slate. And it doesn't look like hitter. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, as we were talking, I was just kind of running early kind of sim or crunch or whatever. And both showed up 5% of the time. So, we have him at less than 1% ownership. So he's one of those guys that I think is going under owned, but also a pretty low probability play.
When it comes to ownership, it doesn't appear that Baltimore is getting any 25th in top stack, 26th in ownership. Are you in any way taking your Orioles against Cease?
I don't really see much of a reason to get there. It's a huge slate. There's a ton of good offenses to get to. It's not even like Cease is pulling crazy ownership if you wanted to go that route. If you wanted to sort of nitpick Cease, he has only, and I use that word loosely, struck out 28.5% of lefties compared to 36% of righties this year. The Orioles lineup is left-handed heavy today. There's only 3 righties in it. But again, like when you factor in ownership, that's not enough to move me off of Cease. And just because he strikes out 28% of lefties instead of 36, he's still allowing a 291 expected WOBA, 115 expected ISO. It's not like I'm looking there and saying like, oh yeah, I really want to pay $5K for Cedric Mullins and Adley Rutschman.
13th in top stack, 12th in ownership. There's a little bit of love coming into Chicago, but nothing too crazy. This is a middle of the pack stack today, unless you see it differently.
I think I might actually be even a little bit lower on them because, again, I do think Voth is a solid pitcher. I think the Orioles bullpen is good. They are reasonably priced, though, so that helps a bit. Luis Roberts, 5,100. Everyone else on this team is 4K or less. The 4K guy being Abreu, which is clearly fine. So overall, yeah, I guess kind of just the middle of the pack spot. But I do think, and just to reiterate, like I think that obviously good players are just using projections and whatever, but I think the general consensus when people talk about this is probably going to be that they think Austin Voth is much, much, much worse than he is.
Yeah, and based on like implied totals and stuff, that should be some evidence that is not the case. But people will read into it anyway. I got basically 1 3-man stack of the White Sox. So I'm with you. I don't really need it. And I didn't exactly get to the Orioles either. So this is a pretty easy game to like stay away from. The pitching is really the only appealing part.
Agreed.
So we go to game 3, Phillies and Reds. It is 4.6 run implied total for the Phillies, 3.2 for the Reds. Ranger Suarez and Nick Lodolo. Lodolo not pulling any ownership at 9K, probably worth a little bit of a look. Suarez, on the other hand, at 9,200, pulling 16% ownership. Obviously, it's a little bit easier to roster Ranger Suarez against the Reds than it is Lodolo against the Phillies. How do you feel about the pitching in this spot?
So I agree pretty much with where the field's coming in. Ranger Suarez at 9,200. We know he has a good matchup against Cincinnati. He's a good enough pitcher. 20.2% strikeout percentage is a little bit less than we would like, but a 3.68 xFIP, 0.8 home runs per 9, going up against a below average Cincinnati team. From an upside standpoint, matchup agnostic, Nick Lodolo is a high upside guy, highly regarded pitching prospect, 4th highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind only Cease, Burns, and Carlos Rodon this year at 28.7%, 3.8 xFIP, does have an elevated walk percentage, has allowed 1.15 home runs per 9, does have a relatively scary matchup against the Phillies, but at 9K and no ownership, he is someone, like you said, that I think is going under-owned here. We have him with a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 2% projected ownership. By comparison, Suarez, $200 more expensive, basically the same top 2 percentage and 7 times the ownership. So I think Suarez projects a little bit better, but I think you also can make the case for getting to some Lodolo in tournaments.
Yeah, I think Lodolo is certainly worth like a ceiling type play if you needed to go there and get away from that. Like if you just wanted to flip from Suarez to Lodolo, I think that is mildly viable. I did get to 6% Lodolo on my crunch. Did not
Somebody
get to a lot of Suarez.
LOL, Orioles unappealing versus White Sox depleted pen. Unfortunately, they're starting one of the best pitchers in baseball in front of that bullpen. So, if they could just choose for Dylan Cease not to pitch and start with the bullpen, I'd like that.
Yeah. I'm assuming they'll have a setup guy and a closer ready once Cease goes 7.
Right.
But yes, LOL, the Orioles are unappealing against the White Sox. And I'm not a huge fan of Suarez here at 9,200. I get why he's getting the ownership. I think he's pretty easy to just simply like slide away from in a larger field GPP if you need to free up any sort of ownership. What I don't like here is the hitting. Unless you're a big fan of the Reds as the 3rd best value stack, they are essentially unowned. The Phillies are, for all intents and purposes, unowned. Hoskins and Real Muto getting 7% and 5% respectively. Do you like either side of this game for offense?
Not particularly. I mean, the Reds, that kind of goes without saying. Jonathan India is leading off. He's also expensive. Senzel's hitting second at 2,400, but just so many good offenses today, not really looking to the Reds. And Suarez has done a good job limiting power this year too. 120 expected ISO to righties, sub 100 expected ISO to lefties. On the other side, Lodolo this year, 139 expected ISO to righties, 323 expected WOBA. He's been pretty unlucky in terms of production. 397 BABIP against right-handed hitters so far. Obviously, is not going to be sustainable. His actual ISO is 20 points higher than his expected. His actual WOBA allowed is 45 points higher than his expected against right-handed hitters. So that's not to say that you can't get to guys like Hoskins at 4,600 and Alec Boehm at 4,200, who's been extremely good offensively of late. Castellanos at 4,100 looks fine as well. If I were going to get to one of these offenses, it would be the Phillies, but I also don't really think they're much of a priority for me here.
I don't have much to like bring up or add here for either one of these teams. Clearly get a little bit of Philadelphia, and that's fine, but not really a priority. And it's really hard to pitch wanting to get to the Reds in anything ever, unless it's showdown.
Yeah, unless it's Fraley leading off against a shitty righty when he's going to score 40 points at 20% owned.
Yeah. MLB Live Before Lock is up after this. 6 p.m. Eastern time, taking you all the way to 7:05. So stay right on this stream. You don't got to go anywhere. MLB Top Stacks tool is free today. That should help you out a lot. We're going to talk about it for every single team, basically. And if you're playing golf this week, final tournament of the season, Tour Championship, PGA ownership will be free, or is free right now if you want to check it out. Go to game number 4, Pirates and Braves. 3-run implied total for the Pirates, 4.8 for the Braves. It's JT Brubaker and Max Fried. Fried 9,400, projected for about 19% ownership. I think the ownership makes sense. I'm a little lighter than that, but at the same time, I understand why it's happening. Pittsburgh, not very good. JT Brubaker, 7,200, not getting owned. Let's talk about Fried, and how do you feel about him in relationship to Dylan Cease, since he's the only guy we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so I think that Freed looks good here. I have him projected about the same as Cease. He's getting a little bit more ownership, but he's also less expensive. It's a good matchup against the Pirates. It's a good park to pitch in. Freed doesn't give you the same sort of strikeout upside. He only has a 23% strikeout percentage this year, which is good, but it's not, your ace like strikeout percentage that you get from guys like Cease, Burns, or Don Ray. But he's a really good pitcher overall. 3.06 xFIP, less than half a home run allowed per 9 innings, 4.3% walk percentage. All of that stuff is just excellent. And then you're getting this matchup against the Pirates. So I do think Fried looks really good here. I think the ownership is pretty much where it should be. I wouldn't say that he's really over-owned at 16%.
No, he just looks right. Like he's going to be a guy that you're getting in, I don't know, 15 to 25% of lineups, probably. And that works for me.
Yep.
We don't have to talk about Brubaker. Let's talk about the Braves bats, though. 4th in top stack, 3rd in ownership, but most of that ownership going to Ronald Acuna. No one in the Braves lineup outside of Acuna is north of 9.5% owned. Do you like Atlanta here up against Brubaker?
In tournaments, yeah. Brubaker is a pitcher that I have some respect for. He's just not bad. Less than 1 home run allowed per 9 this year, 23% strikeout percentage, 3.85 xFIP. Solid park to pitch in, but you still have a 5 implied run total for the Braves, and you still just have so much power in this lineup. And outside of the top 3 guys, Acuna, Swanson, and Riley, this lineup's not very expensive either. Matt Olson at 4,700, certainly reasonable. d'Arnaud hitting 5th is a cheap catcher option. Michael Harris is good. Vaughn Grisham's a good second base option, even hitting 8th. Offers some speed and power at close to minimum salary. So even though it's not the best matchup or the best park, I do think that they're interesting in tournaments. And like you said, Acuna and to some extent d'Arnaud are sort of skewing that aggregate ownership as well. Like if you just look at the top stacks tool, you have the Braves with about a 7% chance of being the top stack and 8% ownership. I think that the functional ownership, if you're 5-man stacking them, is actually a little bit lower, given that Acuna and d'Arnaud are pulling that up.
I didn't get too much Braves on my crunch. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Steamer kind of respects JT Brubaker, 4.1 projected FIP. So just feels like a time where I'm going to have more relatively low owned teams instead of Atlanta, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone for going there. Although righty power just dies in Pittsburgh, 85 park factor per StatCast.
Yeah, the park sucks. And so I did just kind of upload stuff into my Excel sheet as we were talking. And my version of the top stacks tool, which is very similar to ours, it's more optimal percentage based. So I'll get it factors in price a little bit more and also multi-position eligibility. But looks very similar, 6% chance of Atlanta being optimal in the aggregate, 8% projected ownership. So going a little bit over-owned, but again, I think that's pulled up a little bit by Acuna too.
We're not going to talk about Pittsburgh, right?
I don't think we need to do that now.
Red Sox and Blue Jays, 4.4 run implied total for the Sox, 5.1 for the Blue Jays. Josh Winkowski and Ross Stripling, neither guy getting any ownership. Do you want either pitcher?
Stripling and Winkowski, no. Stripling, I think, is a decent pitcher, but I just don't really need him on this slate at 7,400. And then Winkowski, I don't think is a particularly good pitcher, and he's facing the Blue Jays. This is also, I think I'd seen people mention it already. This is the only game on the slate as of right now that has some weather concerns. It's still 2 hours before lock. I don't think there's any value in me trying to guess what I'm going to do with this game, but definitely one to keep an eye on the weather.
Well, if the weather ends up being okay, I think this might be my favorite spot. I like the Red Sox a lot. I like the Blue Jays a lot. I'm well over the field on both teams coming out of my crunch. One of these teams ranks a lot better in top stacks than the other, and that would be the Blue Jays, 2nd in top stack, 5th in ownership, whereas the Red Sox are 13th and 13th. I feel like Boston should just be a little bit higher today, but let's start with Toronto. How do you feel?
I like them. I'm a little bit lower, and by a little bit, actually a lot lower than our top stacks tool on them. I think that their ownership is more in line with where I think they should be. Their ownership's more in line with that. than the top stacks tool, but I do think it's a pretty good spot for them overall. Right-handed power in Fenway is nice. You have basically nothing but right-handed power in this lineup. You're facing a pitcher in Winkowski who has only allowed a 144 expected ISO to righties this year, but has also only struck out 14.7%. And you're talking about a lineup full of above average righties. So if you're going to let these guys put the ball in play in Fenway, I think there's a pretty good chance that they have success.
Yeah, so they popped a lot for me. 12% five mans. That's a pretty sizable percentage on a 15-game slate. And it's sort of just everybody in the like 10 to 15% range. And I'm pretty happy with that given where some of these ownership numbers are coming in. So I love the idea of getting to Toronto. Basically every slate today is no different. Up against Winkowski, no different. 120 park factor for righty power here in Boston. Awesome. Did you see that Bill Burr played Fenway? I guess I'm assuming it was last night, but maybe 2 nights ago.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a headline. I didn't read anything about it.
He posted some pictures. It looked awesome. Like, just the place is packed. It must have been awesome for him. Like, he must have been so pumped.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Speaking of Boston, I'm a little surprised to see that they are not getting more ownership here. 13th in aggregate. They're 13th in our top stack tool. This just feels like another spot where you can kind of buy low on talent.
What talent?
I mean, I got them at a 113 WRC plus. Only Kevin Plawecki below average.
Yeah, but how much of that is just like 3 guys, Devers and then JD and Bogarts?
I mean, is that a bad start to my stack?
Well, no, but where's the rest of it?
4 and 1% ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the ownership's pretty much correct on them. Like, I think Stripling's a good pitcher. He's not going to go super deep into the game, but 152 expected ISO to righties this year, 106 to lefties. I'm certainly not trying to talk anyone off of Devers ever. Bogarts looks good. Martinez is fine. Verdugo's cheap. But yeah, I think they're kind of just middle of the road, bottom quarter from me, or bottom like third for me, probably.
Bottom third. You're crazy. For this park?
I'm pretty much in line with the top stack tool here, where we have them at like 3-ish% chance of being the top stack.
Well, yeah, that's 13th. Bottom third is significantly lower than that.
Bottom third is like 2%.
Bottom third is like 20th to 30th.
Well, right, but if you're looking at the actual numbers, it's like 2% instead of 3%. So yeah, I guess bottom half, not bottom third. But
okay,
I don't think there's a big difference. Like, I don't know. I think that their ownership's pretty much where it should be. I think they're just like a mediocre stack.
Interesting. I gotta disagree. It's Team Boston for me. Like, I got everybody except for Kike Hernandez at 10% ownership right now, which is pretty sizable in comparison. But it's not like nobody's owned outside of Christian Arroyo at 7. I'll happily take the Pham, Verdugo, Bogarts, Devers, Martinez, top 5 at next to no ownership in this spot. And I like Stripling too.
I appreciate the person who likes Kike Hernandez at home telling me how to read the top stacks tool. That was useful.
Boy.
Speaking of Kike Hernandez, have you seen how shitty he's been this year? I didn't, obviously, I'm sure you haven't. I didn't really realize it until I just happened to see his line when they were playing the Orioles in Williamsport the other day. But 56 games, 259 plate appearances, 70 WRC plus. Kind of notable since he was really bad in 2019 and really bad in 2020 as well, and then was good last year.
That's not good. Not good at all. Anyway, I say place in Boston.
Somebody said Kike's not in the lineup. Yes, he is.
No idea what his name is. That's funny. Let's keep it moving then. Tigers and Giants. 3-run implied total for the Tigers. 4.5 for the Giants. Drew Hutchison going for Detroit. Carlos Rodon going for the Giants. This is a spot that's pulling a bunch of ownership, and that should not be all that surprising. It's a great strikeout matchup. It's a bad offense. It's a place where lefty power goes to die. It's a place that righty power isn't that great either. Rodon pulling 28% ownership. That's the second highest mark on the slate, and I think he deserves it. The only concern is that he's $11K, the most expensive pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, that's That is really the only concern. It's that, not only is he 11K, which I think is pretty much where he should be against the Tigers, but you have so many other guys that are at least somewhat less expensive and offer similar strikeout upside. Rodon's the third highest strikeout percentage on this slate, which is unusual. 31.7%. That's normally going to lead the way, but still of course, a really good pitcher. About 0.6 home runs per nine, 305 xFIP. Good matchup against the Tigers. I have him optimal around 17% of the time. We have him as a top two pitcher around, I think, around 20% of the time. 28% ownership. So I think he's a good option. I assume I'll be somewhere around the field.
Yeah, I ended up getting a little bit more than the field on my first run. It's just, I don't really have do I have him projected as the best pitcher today? Yeah. And could it have been any other guy in that top five and I would be surprised? No, not at all.
Right.
But the matchup's great. The strikeout matchup's great. If you got a lineup that can get to Carlos Rodon, by all means, please do that. And don't get to Drew Hutchison.
Yeah, agreed completely.
All right. Let's talk about these Giants bats because they're generally difficult to talk about. And on a 15-game slate, I feel like they're even more difficult. 7th in top stack, 3rd in ownership. We're seeing Tommy LaStella and Brandon Crawford both get into the low teens in projected ownership. LaStella, a flat 2K with an MPE in the leadoff spot is something. Do you like this Giant stack? Could you do it today? What do we do here? Is LaStella a cash option for you?
That's a good question. Probably. Actually, no. It looks like it's going to depend on the Rangers lineup just came out. So yeah, maybe. When I ran 100 of my top projected lineups at the beginning of the show, and second base was essentially either Marcus Semien or Brad Miller, but Brad Miller is not in their lineup, so that could very easily become like Tommy LaStella if you need to pay down. I think
LaStella's first, third, by the way.
Oh, then never mind.
The moment you were like, second base, I was just like, oh, this should be good.
So he showed up in 5 of my 100. Nate Lowe was essentially the first baseman. Emmanuel Rivera was very frequently the third baseman.
I'm getting LaStella in like 60-ish, 50 to 60% of everything right now.
Yeah, so we're obviously on very different pages there.
I mean, I think that if you bumped Tommy LaStella's projection by like 0.2, it would dramatically
I don't know
change.
If you know the answer to this. Did he move up in the lineup when Belt was scratched, or was he hitting leadoff the entire time?
I have no idea.
Because that would probably make a difference in my projection.
Yeah. Leadoff, flat minimum MPE hitter with a 4.5 run implied total on the road is like by default an option.
Yeah, no, I already had him lead off. So yeah, he's certainly an option. He's just not getting into the lineups I built.
I ran 100 and got him in, call it 58.
Yeah, I got 5.
Okay.
But I
wonder where I'm getting him.
He's obviously fine.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's primarily coming in at third because Nate Lowe is in 74% of my lineups.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was if you wanted to tell me that you're playing LaStella ahead of Emmanuel Rivera, I would think that's fine.
Rivera in 41% of mine too. So those are the only two options for me at third, really.
Yeah, Brian Anderson's getting a little bit at third for me too. But yeah, if you wanted to tell me you like LaStella more, I wouldn't really have an issue there. I do think there's some pinch hit risk with him, but I've talked about it before. I'm not as concerned about pinch hitters when the Giants are facing a righty, just because bullpens don't carry as many lefties. It looks like the Tigers bullpen has 2 lefties, and one of them is their closer. So it's not like you're bringing him in the 5th inning to force anybody out of the game. It's just harder if you only have one lefty, you can only bring him in one time. So obviously it's a lower probability that he's just going to be brought in to face LaStella and Wade and get them out of the game, as opposed to like bring him in for Brandon Crawford, who's probably not going to get pinch hit for, and then probably he's out of the game by the time you get to LaStella Wade. So not as concerned about the pinch hitting, even though there is still some risk, as I am when they face a lefty starter, because there's no shortage of right-handed arms that are coming in to face like Austin Slater and get him out of the game. But I do think that the Giants look good here. They're cheap. LaStella, we just talked about a lot at 2K. Lamont Wade hitting second at 2,800. Wilmer Flores is fine. Jock Peterson only 4,300. I do wish Brandon Belt was in this lineup. He was scratched, so he's not. But still, I think looks like a good lineup here against Hutchison, who is a not very good pitcher. So far this year, has only allowed a 157 expected ISO to lefties, which is not great, but it's not bad. 333 expected WOBA there, 190 expected ISO to righties, 362 expected WOBA. So again, I like those lefties, but don't sleep on Wilmer Flores and Evan Longoria here either.
Should we? How deeply would you like to sleep on the Tigers bets today?
They are about as far down as I think you can get.
They showed up in one 3-man stack, and that's essentially randomness.
Yep.
I've got nothing else here. Play Carlos Rodon. Carlos Rodon, I would say highly likely cash option today. He and Robbie Ray were in basically everything that I did.
Yeah, in the top 100 lineups I crunched, Ray was in all 100, Rodon was in 96, Verlander was in 4.
Yeah, I had it 99 Rodon, 95 Ray, Verlander 6. So sounds like we're in the same boat. Rays and Angels. 4.1 run implied total for the Rays, 3.1 for the Angels. Corey Kluber and Jose Suarez. No ownership going to Suarez. He's 6,600. Corey Kluber in 10% lineups at 7,700. I guess that feels about right. Angels now have Trout back. Not the best strikeout matchup in the world today for Kluber. Sometimes it is when it's the Angels. Do you have anything exciting to say about Corey Kluber here?
No, I think he just looks like one of the better mid-range options. We had talked before that there is a lot of good pitching on this slate, but it's typically 9K plus. Kluber is just a decent pitcher in a good pitcher's park here. 21.7% strikeout percentage this year, 3.77 xFIP. Ohtani's back in the lineup for the Angels, so that certainly makes the lineup a bit more dangerous for Kluber. We have him projected for about 10.5% ownership. I think that's fine.
Yeah. I don't know how else to explain it. I got like 7%. That's just how it looks in and around that area. If you're really anti Pablo Lopez and Corey Kluber, that can become Frankie Montas, I guess, but I just don't care. And I definitely don't want Jose Suarez.
Yeah, so I think Suarez is basically another Austin Voth type guy. Yeah. He projects basically 2x his salary, very similar to Voth for me, but I also just doubt I'm going to need to get to that price range.
Let's talk about the Rays bats who are currently unowned here against Suarez. Highest owned guy in the Rays lineup that I saw was 2.3% owned Christian Bethancourt. They are 19th in our top stack and 17th in ownership. I'm a little surprised that they're 19th today, but a 4.1 run implied total, I guess, will do that. Are you a little surprised that the Rays implied total isn't a little bit higher here?
Not really. I don't think their offense is very good, and they're in Tropicana. So, yeah, not really. I mean, Arozarena, Paredes, Ramirez, Diaz, like, those guys are all fine. Bethancourt, like you said, at 2,700, I guess, but he's hitting 8th. I don't have a lot of interest here. Suarez this year has allowed some power to righties, 172 expected ISO. Does also have a 24% strikeout percentage against them. Yeah, it's just not a team that I'm overly excited about.
Okay. This is a team that I'm getting to at basically no ownership. 1.6.
I think they're going underowned. But.
Yeah. 1%, 1.6% in the aggregate. They did show up in a decent chunk of my lineup. So I'm quite a bit over that number, and I'm willing to take that shot. They're very easy to stack. 3 different MPEs in the lineup. No one, like only one guy at 4,900. Next most expensive guy is 4,300. So I can see how I'm getting to them. And the fact that like no one is touching them is mildly appealing, but not like a rubber stamp. You should absolutely play this team, but I do like them at minimal to no ownership. I don't like the Angels. No surprise. I don't think I've liked the Angels once all year. Like, do you ever get to an Angels stack?
I've actually played the Angels a decent amount this year, and it hasn't been good. What'd you say?
Okay. I was going to say, like, I don't feel like I ever get the Angels.
I've been getting Rengifo a lot recently, which has actually worked out. I think because he has multi-position eligibility and just keeps hitting in the middle of the order, but I don't think that'll be the case today.
Okay. I don't have anything else here.
No, again, Green said if you saw this guy in Boston, you would not think it played. And to clarify, I said they played an hour and a half. I'm not saying I think they played an hour and a half. I'm saying I'm putting zero thought into it right now because it doesn't matter what this guy looks like right now. Yeah, just pay attention to it closer to lock.
Yeah, there's no importance to the weather at 526. That much I know. What is important, however, is OddsShopper, presenting sponsor of this show. We talk about them a lot, and we should because it's awesome. We should also talk about the fact that you guys need to hit that like button because there's 750 of you and 88 likes. You guys should take that as just an embarrassment for yourselves. 125. Let's go. Hit that thumbs up. So for Odd Shopper, if you're in a legal state, it's great. You can browse around for the best line possible. We'll show you all sorts of additional data as well. Those bets will be one click away. If you're making bets and you're not getting the best line, you're just costing yourself money. You deserve to lose at that point in time. We try to make it easier for you by giving you guys Odd Shopper for free. Sorry, I buried the lead there a little bit. Completely free tool for you guys if you go to OddsShopper.com. But the even bigger piece here, I think to me, is on the player prop side, where we show you the projection. We show you the expected ROI, the expected win rate. We're showing you the hold on those bets. There's so much data there, once again, for free. And again, you're just one click away from putting that bet in. If that doesn't sound great to you at no cost, I don't think you guys will ever be pleased. So take advantage of a great deal and go to OddsShopper.com for a free tool to help you in your sports betting endeavors. Game 8. Here we go. Cubs and Cardinals. 4.2 run implied total for the Cubs. 4.6 for the Cardinals. There's 125 likes, by the way. Thank you, guys. Adrian Sampson and Jake Woodford going here. I think it's Jake Woodford. At least he does not appear to be in our ownership projections. He's just the opener. Potentially it's just a full-on bullpen game. I never saw anything about a long man. I think what is safe to say here is that we're not rostering pitching.
Yeah, agreed. And as far as Woodford goes, he was starting at AAA earlier this year and was actually stretched out. But recently he's been out of the pen for the Cardinals. He pitched August 21st, I believe it was, went an inning and a third. So I find it pretty difficult to think that he's giving you any semblance of length here.
All right. And then we can just skip Adrian Sampson and we can talk a little bit about Cardinals bats, sixth in top stack, sixth in ownership, a lot of it going to Nootbaar. Do you like the Cardinals against Sampson?
They're okay. I think Sampson's actually decent. He was really, really bad early in his career, went to the KBO, came back, still struggled a bit last year, but so far this year, not a lot of strikeout stuff from him, only about a 19% strikeout percentage, but 4.36 xFIP, 3.68 FIP, less than 1 home run per 9. The Cardinals, we know, are a good offense, but we also don't know what this lineup's going to look like. So that certainly plays a role here as well. It's a doubleheader for them. So if you do get a full strength lineup, then, Goldschmidt, Arenado, O'Neill, all are going to look fine. Nootbaar, if he's leading off for cheap, would look pretty good as well. If Albert Pujols is in there at 2K, I don't know if they would start him against a righty or not, but he's been legitimately
might as well
hitting baseballs this year. So why not? 2K is just clearly cheap, even in the wrong side of the split, if he's in the lineup. But, the Cardinals look okay here. The weather doesn't seem great for hitting. Looks like it's supposed to be around 75 degrees, give or take, and wind is not blowing out. But still a decent spot for the Cardinals as long as we get some semblance of a normal lineup.
If they legalized all steroids for people 40 years and older, would you be okay with that? I mean, I assume you'd be okay with it if they just did it across the board.
Did it across the board,
yeah.
Yeah, Greg and I talked about it before the show this morning and on the show. One, I just have no issue with it anyway. Especially in a sport like baseball, I would have a bigger issue with it, and not that I even necessarily would, but a bigger issue with it in a sport like basketball or football, where there's a huge advantage simply to being as big as you possibly can. In baseball, you still have to be skilled at hitting a baseball for it to matter at all. So I just really have no issue with it there. But
football, I think, is the worst.
What'd you say?
Football, I think, is the worst.
Yeah.
That creates just the biggest possibility for aggressive injury,
right,
or death.
But the other thing that I've always just found hilarious in the way that it's pushed is we can't have our players do steroids for health reasons. Here are ample painkillers so that you get addicted to opioids, and that is good for you.
Yeah, I mean, they used to have fish bowls of amphetamines in the locker rooms for games in the 60s and 70s. Nobody gave a single shit about any of it.
Right.
We act like hitters don't hit off of pitchers that were also on the gas, as if only hitters were allowed to take things back in the day.
And yeah, I mean, as far as the Hall of Fame stuff goes, absolute joke.
It's not a thing anymore to me. I used to care, and now it's meaningless.
If I not that I have kids, but at some point if I had kids, take them to the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame looks like it does right now, I would then have to spend the rest of my day explaining to them who the actual best players were when I was growing up, because they're not in there. They saved baseball that summer with McGuire and Sosa. It was actively promoted by the league that 100% knew what was going on, and then
Yeah.
they become a scapegoat years later. Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter ever. He's not in there. Yeah, it's a joke.
It bothers me so much that they just ruin everything, especially once Big Papi gets in, and it's like, okay, that's even more ridiculous. Like,
oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
I hate it.
Petriello actually tried to make the argument that there's like a logical way for David Ortiz to be in the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds not to be, which was just like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
You're going to have to jump through quite a few hoops to get to that one. It is weird though. Like, I care a lot about Bonds not being in. I don't care that Clemens obviously is an inner circle Hall of Famer. I don't care at all because he just always seemed like a complete douche.
Well, it's just a different level. Like I care that Clemens isn't in. I care that Palmeiro is not in. I care that Sosa's not in. I care that McGuire's not in. Bonds being in is just like actively destructive to the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Yeah. I just never liked Clemens, whereas like I loved Bonds always.
Right. Well, and that's like for me. Like, I mean, I obviously loved Palmeiro, being an Orioles fan. So like, it annoys me that he's not in. But like those guys, it's all just like, okay, this is a joke that they're not in. But like Bonds is you can't, and you can't without McGuire or Sosa either. But like you can't document the history of baseball and pretend Barry Bonds does not exist.
He was must-see baseball television. They would just cut to his at-bats just because everything he did was a dong.
Right. Do y'all remember Albert Bell? Yeah, Cleveland and the White Sox, and then the Orioles. The thing I always forget about Albert Bell, because like I remember him being a bust for the Orioles. He was actually really good with the Orioles, but then his hip just stopped working. But I always thought about it like that he was bad and then got hurt. He was actually legitimately good even with the Orioles.
Yeah, it started off really well, and then it just kind of went away pretty quickly too. Pete Rose is a completely different.
Pete Rose should also be in. It's completely different, but he also, in my opinion, should be in.
Yeah. Look, if we want to start litigating like whether or not people were making good decisions, we can pick up a lot of those 1900 to 1940s guys that were like grade A pieces of shit.
Yeah, and also across sports. But as long as O.J. Simpson's in the NFL Hall of Fame, I don't really care about who, from a moral standpoint, is in any other sports Hall of Fame.
You think, do you think they should take him out because he was found guilty of kidnapping?
Yeah, that's all that he's ever done.
I thought so. I mean, he was just trying to get his memorabilia back. Cubs bats? I think that's where we're at. I have no idea at this point. I don't know how we got here. Pujols. There we go. That was the path we took. Do you like the Cubs bats?
That's how I got there. Yeah, Cubs bats. I think I have a pretty tough time making a case for them. Bullpen games aren't overly appealing. The weather, the hitting conditions don't seem that great here. You have 15 other games to get to. For the most part, they're pretty expensive as well. Madrigal's cheap. Reyes is typically pretty cheap, but I don't really see much standing out from the Cubs.
Dusty in chat said, enter Ray Lewis. Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah, Kevin Heim said, how about Ray Lewis, Adam? Yeah, same boat. I'm not a Ravens fan, so you're not going to trip me up with that one.
Yeah, no. He was at the live final that I proxied for Alex for, and we were all just like locked in a Hoboken bar. I was just like, this is a little scary. My buddy was wearing a Steelers jersey, and Ray Lewis like tapped him on the back and was just like, nice jersey. And I was just like, yo, dude, take that jersey off. Astros. And
I do find it impressive how well Ray Lewis has rehabilitated his image. Like,
dude, it's like they removed it from his Wikipedia. No one brings it up.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Totally irrelevant. Like, completely irrelevant.
And OJ's not doing a bad job of it either. But OJ's like doing it on his own, where like he
transcends everything because he was a household name.
Right. But like OJ like does a good job. He's charismatic. He's comes across on those videos as just like likable and stuff. But like you don't have ESPN just throwing him out there for everybody to like to like give, you know, lifestyle speeches to people.
No, they can't. OJ was too famous. Like there's no coming back from that. Ray Lewis is football famous, but like and obviously like a huge gentleman you would see on the street that you would assume did something, but a lot, like most people don't know who Ray Lewis is. OJ was in movies.
Right.
Oh man. So crazy. Astros and Twins, 4.8 run implied total for the Stros, 2.8 for the Twins. Just assumed that it was a 3. Justin Verlander and Aaron Sanchez. No one's going to Sanchez. People are going to Verlander. 10,500 third most expensive pitcher on the slate, 26% owned. So he is pulling, he's sort of like the meat in this Burns Cease sandwich that isn't getting as much love. I like all of these guys pretty equally. I understand why Verlander is getting the ownership, but is he a little over owned for this spot?
So this one was really tough for me to talk about this morning because he projects better than Cease by a little bit. He projects like he should be getting, the ownership that he is, more or less, probably a little bit over owned at 26%. But I even have a hard time kind of articulating why I would like him, or like why he projects better than Cease. The Twins have a lower implied run total by a wide margin, 2.6 to like 3.5. And I assume that's the reason, but I have a difficult time coming up with like why that is. Houston, a better pitcher's park than Baltimore. No Byron Buxton from Minnesota. That all is working in Verlander's favor. But we're still talking about somebody that has a 25% strikeout percentage this year compared to like 32% for Cease. 3.46 xFIP is worse than Cease. He's allowed basically the same home runs per 9. He does have a better walk percentage, but I just have a hard time explaining like why he projects better, even though he does. And in situations like this, I'm just going to go with the data and projections and assume that I'm wrong and they're right. But for the purposes of the show, like I do think he's going a little bit over-owned, even with the way the data looks. But I also just have a really hard time explaining why he projects better than Cease.
So much for me here is basically I have Verlander projected for 2 more outs than Cease, and that's enough to like bump his projection up. That sort of is everything. And I obviously have Verlander's strikeout rate a little bit higher. It's steamer projection. So like this year, while it counts, is not counting for the full amount and is still running high from previous seasons. So a little bit of that. Cease has been better now. So if you ask me if I had to pick between them, like I probably like Cease a little bit more. I certainly do based on the ownership, but the 2 extra outs is enough to make up like over a fantasy point here. That's my path to it, at least.
Yeah.
Still, obviously, play Justin Verlander. He looks good today.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And again, that's one of those where, like, when I say that I trust the projections more than my brain, also not being the one to do the projections, I don't know what the inputs were as far as like how many outs and stuff. So that's another reason why I'm not very quick to just say like, oh, well, I think C should be higher, Verlander should be lower, and change it, because there's a good chance that the people that did it have a reason for it, and so that makes sense.
Astros stack against Sanchez here.
Yes. Sanchez, 8 starts this year between a couple of teams. Just hasn't been very good, not particularly surprising. 4.24 xFIP really isn't bad, but not striking guys out. 184 expected ISO to righties this year. Only 119 to lefties in the limited sample, but when you're talking about lefties like Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, I don't really care. Altuve, Bregman, Mancini in the park built for his spray chart, essentially. All these guys look very good here. Nearly a 5 implied run total for Houston as well.
All righty. Yeah, they are 8th in top stack, 9th in ownership. Happy to get to any of these guys. The guys pulling the ownership are Alvarez and Tucker, and they should. So it should be pretty easy to fill out the rest of this Houston stack. And I think it's, is there any value in the Twins? I think the answer is no, but like just asking.
No, I don't think so either. And to answer the question in chat, yes, I listen to Snoop Dogg. I also watch when Ray Lewis is on TV, and I have no issue with O.J. Simpson having a Twitter account. It doesn't change anything about things they've done.
Yeah, I'm going to be very clear here. I am going to aggressively listen to R. Kelly's music when I get in the car in like an hour.
That's odd.
Why?
I don't know. I just didn't strike you as a solo road trip listening to R. Kelly guy.
Oh my God. I'll be singing I Believe I Can Fly at the top of my lungs. World's greatest. We got to talk about like the Ignition remix. This dude wrote a remix before he wrote the first song, which is like the most ridiculous story I've ever heard. Love that man. Love that man. Jackson 5 comes on. Not changing it. Not changing it. Royals and Diamondbacks, 4.3 run implied total for the Royals, 4.6 for the Diamondbacks. John Heasley and Zach Davies going here. This might be the worst combination of pitching today. I can't imagine you want either one of these guys.
Yeah, same. I agree. Davies obviously not very good. Heasley even worse. Neither offense is great, but They both look pretty good here. No Pasquantino. He was added to the injured list today, so maybe I'll stop getting to as much KC, but I kind of doubt it. They still have a bunch of guys with multi-position eligibility that are also cheap. Melendez, Witt, Perez are all good hitters. Prado is a top 100 hitting prospect. Michael A. Taylor is hitting 5th at 2K. Ryan O'Hearn, multi-position eligibility cleanup at 2K. They are getting some ownership, but I think it's deserved when you factor in the multi-position eligibility as well going against Davies.
Yeah, 6 MPEs, which is crazy. They are 16th in top stack and 4th in ownership. That's insane.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks are 5th in top stack and 7th in ownership. Are the Diamondbacks the more interesting side of this? Emmanuel Rivera, the only guy pulling any sort of real ownership. We touched on him earlier as the cash option at third base.
Yeah, I do like the Diamondbacks here. Heasley's really bad. Like anything you look at is just bad for this guy. 188 expected ISO to righties, 365 expected WOBA, only a 15% strikeout percentage, 234 expected ISO and a 385 expected WOBA to lefties, only an 18% strikeout percentage. You have Ketel Marte and Josh Rojas from the left side hitting 3rd and 1st respectively. Varsho hitting 5th with some power as well. We know Christian Walker's got plenty of power hitting cleanup. Carson Kelly's a reasonable catcher option. We mentioned Emmanuel Rivera being cheap at third base, hitting 2nd. Also, revenge game for anyone that cares about that, which you shouldn't, but I'm sure there's at least one person that does. If you want to go further down in the lineup, you have Alec Thomas hitting 8th. So I like the Diamondbacks here, and they're a team that I normally am not particularly interested in.
Yeah, I think both teams look interesting on, like, the Royals are just sort of semi-free and fit in every combination that possibly exists. And I think the Diamondbacks just simply look like a better stack. And the pitching is certainly nothing to write home about. So sneaky game here, Royals and Diamondbacks.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, 2 bad offenses. They're both getting ownership too, but just 2 of, especially in Heasley's case, just really, really bad pitchers.
And then we get to Coors. Rockies and Rangers, 5.4 run implied total for the Rockies, 5.2 for the Rangers. Erman Marquez and Dane Dunning. No ownership coming in here for either pitcher. Do you have any interest in Marquez?
No.
Okay. I know the answer is no for Dunning, but, like, if you get to Marquez in Colorado, that's probably a little different against Texas, but
it just seems unnecessary
I also
on the slate. Like, yeah. I'd rather go to Suarez or both.
Yeah, agreed. Who do you want to talk about first here? Is it the Rockies team that's 3rd in top stack, 8th in ownership, maybe a little under-owned, or is it the Rangers, 1st in top stack, also 1st in ownership?
I'd rather talk about the Rockies first because I'm hoping I get to them first.
I have a lot of the Rockies here at basically no ownership, and it's for the same reason it always is, because for some reason they're not owned.
Yeah, and I think it's like even more unusual here because we've gotten a lot of these games where the visiting team, whether it's the Dodgers or the Giants, those are the Cardinals, I think we're in a similar boat, where they're just like not only favored, but free across the board. So you're getting this team with like a 6.5 implied run total, and every hitter is like 3K or below, or $1,000 less than they should be. So, and then the Rockies are like normally priced. And so you're not only getting the Rockies as like the underdog, but also as the more expensive team. Here, the Rangers are still cheap, but not quite to that same extent. Corey Seager's 5,800, Semion's 4,900, Garcia's 4,700. Then everybody else is way underpriced. But also, this game's a pick'em. It's not. The Rangers have a 5.3 implied run total. It's not, a 6.5 implied run total like we were seeing from these other teams. And the Rockies have a 5.3 implied run total as well. So I do think it's kind of surprising that the Rockies aren't getting more ownership, or aren't getting ownership closer to the Rangers, because while they are more expensive, it's not by a crazy amount, and they have the same implied run total. So just kind of surprised here that they're not getting a little bit more.
You and me both. This is a team that I have a ton of on my first crunch. Let's see. How much did I actually get? They were my 2nd most exposed team, and at 5% aggregate. I mean, there are so many teams that have more ownership than the Rockies right now that are not in the same sort of hitting environment as the Rockies.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I think Dane Dunning
is the Giants, for example. I would just rather have Colorado.
The Giants are kind of a different price point, but sure.
Yeah, that's fair. Giants are free. I didn't realize they were so free.
Yeah. And to be clear, like I Don't think it's a great matchup for either team. Marquez is fine. Dane Dunning is not bad either. This year, a 24.5% strikeout percentage, only a 124 expected ISO against righties for Dunning, and you're going to get a predominantly right-handed lineup. You have Blackman and McMahon from the left side within the top 5. Sam Hilliard's in there as well. Against lefties this year, only a 16% strikeout percentage for Dunning, 150 expected ISO. But he's not a pitcher that I'm looking at and saying, oh yeah, I love taking bats against this guy. But in Coors Field, not getting much ownership to the Rockies, I do like it. And CJ Cron's back in this lineup as well after missing the last couple of games.
How about the Rangers? Where do you end up landing there? First in top stack, first in ownership. Clearly they look good, but I think they're kind of easy to shy away from today.
Yeah, they're a team that I think you're getting to a lot in cash games, and I think that, I'll get to them probably more so as like filler in tournaments than as full 5-man stacks, just because, again, they are getting a lot of ownership, not as aggressive as teams before like the Dodgers and Giants were, but, still the highest owned team on the slate by a pretty wide margin. And I just don't think the spot's that much better than other spots.
I agree. Semien obviously is basically like close to a cash lock. I know he showed up in just about everything for me. Already pulling ownership. Nate Lowe also very high in my unencumbered crunch, also pulling some ownership. Brad Miller, Corey Seager, Tavares, like a lot of options from Texas from a cash perspective.
Yeah,
I was getting
and Alan Burns
3 or 4 guys in each crunch or each lineup from Texas today.
Yeah, and Alan Burns said most hitters are 4K or higher for Colorado, so getting 2 solid pitchers is hard with them. I really don't think it is. And the reason is that you have so many good value hitters from other teams. Like, if you play 5 of those guys from Colorado, you have plenty of options you can use from the Rangers that are 2K. You have plenty of guys on the Giants that are really cheap. You have plenty of guys on Kansas City that are really cheap. You have cheap guys just basically everywhere, and so you can still fill out those lineups pretty easily. And that's kind of my point here is like, yeah, they're more expensive than Texas, but functionally, I don't think it makes that much of a difference because you have so many cheap bats elsewhere.
I mean, I can go to a 5-man Rocky stack: La Stella, Nate Lowe, Alejandro Kirk. So chalk catcher, chalk first, probably chalk third baseman, Rodon and Ray. So
right.
It's not going to be all that difficult to pull off a Rocky stack here today. Look, do I want a lot of this bottom part of the Rockies order? No, these guys suck. They're real not good baseball players, but they're also relatively unowned and they're playing in Coors, and that is appealing to me. Colorado's more appealing to me than the Rangers in a large field contest. That I am comfortable saying.
Agreed.
Anything else we should touch on here?
Nope.
A's and Marlins, 3.3 run implied total for the A's, 3.9 for the Marlins. Zach Logue and Pablo Lopez. Lopez getting some love here. 18% ownership at 8,100 in Oakland. So good spot to be pitching, at least to try to limit runs and certainly right-handed power. How do you feel about Lopez's ownership?
I think it's okay. It's similar to Kluber for me. I have Lopez a little bit ahead of Kluber. He's also projected for a little bit more ownership. And there's just not a lot that you're going to be confident in this price range. It's a good matchup. It's a good park. Lopez is a good enough pitcher. You're getting him outside of Miami, but it's still a pitcher-friendly park in Oakland. A 23.8% strikeout percentage overall this year, 3.58 xFIP. Pretty cheap price tag for him as well. So I think he's a good play.
All right. That works for me. I have no complaints in getting to Lopez. Ownership might be a little problematic for me, but not so much that like I don't get why he's getting the ownership. The easier thing for me is to talk about bats here. 29th in top stack, 26th in ownership. They are 4th in value. Do you have any interest in Oakland?
No, not particularly.
15th in top stack, 12th in ownership, but our number 1 value stack. How do you feel about the Miami Marlins?
Not great there either. The park still sucks. The Marlins suck, but I do think individually, Brian Anderson at 2,300 with third base outfield eligibility looks good. Jesus Aguilar, if he's back in the lineup at 2,600, is going to look fine. John Birdie gives you some upside, but he's actually expensive, so I think he's probably still going to be pretty difficult to get to. But Brian Anderson, individually, I think looks very good.
11% owned for Anderson right now. Looking good with the MPE. I have nothing else here, though. This is a game that is outside of Lopez is pretty easy to ignore.
Agreed.
One last time, guys. 900 viewers, 163 likes. If we can get up to like 185, I think that would be perfect. That would leave us a decent shot to flip that over to 200 before lock gets here at 6 p.m. Padres and Guardians. Mike Clevenger and Aaron Savale. Neither guy getting any ownership. Clevenger at 8,600, Savale at 7K. I don't have interest in Savale going up against the Padres. Do you have any interest in Clevenger here against Cleveland?
A little bit, but basically just one of those guys where I think he's going under-owned, but I also think that he's a pretty low probability play. He's not a bad pitcher by any stretch. Has a 21% strikeout percentage this year. In the past, he's been higher, 4.52 xFIP this year, but again, typically is better than those numbers. It's not a good strikeout matchup against Cleveland, though, and that's going to push him down a bit, behind guys like Lopez and Kluber, I think. And then also he's 8,600, so he's not that far behind, Ranger Suarez or Max Fried in terms of salary either.
Yeah, the problem here for me is the lack of strikeouts for Cleveland. Strikeout rates for the first four guys in the Cleveland lineup, 11, 17, 13, and 16%. That's just going to be tough sledding for racking up fantasy points. So I don't have much interest in either pitcher. No ownership coming into either one of these stacks. They're 18th and 20th, respectively. Do you want to get to San Diego or Cleveland today from a hitting perspective? Because they are unowned.
I kind of like the idea of San Diego if you can make it work, just because they are obviously a very high upside offense that isn't getting much ownership. The thing that I think is going to make it very difficult for me to actually get there is the salaries, because this isn't like, a Colorado type team where you can just go with a bunch of mid 4K guys and figure it out elsewhere. If you're going to get the best guys from San Diego, you're paying 6,300 for Soto, you're paying 62 for Machado, 56 for Drury, 5K for Bell, 4,600 for Cronenworth. Putting all those guys together, it is going to actually make it difficult for you to get good pitching. So with all of these offenses that are going to allow you to just get two really good pitchers in your lineup, it becomes kind of tough for me to build teams that I like with the Padres here. I like the ceiling that they give you, but I do think that relative to other teams, they're probably a little bit more expensive than I'm going to get to, at least in the way of full stacks.
Oh, man, what a terrible take here. I mean, the first part's fine, but Ray Lewis is the best linebacker ever and a top 10 best NFL ever to play. He's so far away from being a top 10 overall NFL player. It's crazy.
Yeah, that seems pretty nuts.
He wouldn't even be a top 10 guy in an individual season.
Because of his position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like saying that like Mariano Rivera is a top 10 Major League Baseball player ever. That's insane. Insane. Not even close. Not even remotely close. I don't have anything else to say about Padres or Guardians, so we'll go Dodgers and Brewers. 3.9 run implied total for the Dodgers. Thanks for sucking last night. I'm sure you'll score a ton of runs today. 3.3 for the Brewers. Tony Gonsolin and Corbin Burns. Gonsolin not really getting any love, 9,700. Corbin Burns not really getting a ton of love either, 10,600, but he's got to face the Dodgers. What do you do with Burns on a day like today in a really difficult matchup?
I think he's one kind of interesting way to sort of differentiate some lineups if you need to, because it is a really difficult matchup, but you could make a case that he's having the best season of any pitcher on this slate. Second highest strikeout percentage at 32%, leads the way in strikeout minus walk percentage, has the best xFIP at 2.9. He's obviously really, really good. The matchup is just very difficult. It's more difficult than Cease's matchup. It's certainly a lot more difficult than Carlos Rodon's matchup and Robbie Ray's matchup. So that does push the projection down a bit. He projects for me behind all of Carlos Rodon, Ray, Verlander, Cease, Fried. But he's still in that same range. The range of outcomes, like the ceiling for him, is still high. So if you need to offset some ownership, I think that's fine. If I'm going to relatively low owned ace type pitchers, I probably would get to Cease before I get to Burns, but still think that you can get to him in tournaments, especially if you are playing more popular teams.
I'm with you on that one. What about Gonsolin at no ownership? Is he sneaky interesting against the Brewers here? Feels like he should be more like the price is really just the problem. Is he like a sort of pay up to be contrarian guy?
Right. That's kind of the way I view it, is like 3% ownership. When, like, if you look at the top pitchers tool, everybody around him is double digit ownership, and then there's him. I think it's fair to say he's going under-owned. The issue that I think you really run into with trying to get Gonsolin into lineups is not only does he not project as well as the guys a little bit more expensive, like Cease, Burns, Verlander, Ray, Rodon, but he also doesn't project as well as Ranger Suarez or Max Fried, who are less expensive. So I think that's the issue with Gonsolin, is you end up getting, like, obviously medium projections aren't everything in any sport, but especially baseball. But you still just end up, if you go to Gonsolin in a lot of lineups, I think, getting pretty far away from like the best projected lineups you can make. But I do think that he is going under owned. So I don't anticipate I have a lot of him, but I do think that he should be more than 2 or 3% owned. There are strikeouts to be had in the Brewers lineup. He is still a good pitcher as well. We talk a lot about him regressing or being due for regression after the first half he had, but he should regress to being a very good pitcher, just not one of the best pitchers in baseball.
I got 9%, and like I think that would be like what I would want on guys like him. If he's 3% owned, I would happily take 9. I won't notice it, but I think that's about what he should be owned. So it feels to me like what I'm doing is working for someone like him.
Right.
Dodgers bats, Brewers bats, seems like a kind of tough sell. I'd be more likely to probably get to the Brewers bats against Gonsolin, even though I just, kind of went for him there. But I really just don't like the hitting. I mean, I like the hitting. I just like the pitching too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides are a really difficult sell. I would probably get to the Dodgers first just because they are the Dodgers and they're not getting any ownership, but they're also expensive. Like, if you had gotten, it would be a lot easier to make a case for the Dodgers if you'd gotten that like dynamic pricing that you used to get against the Aces pretty frequently. But you're paying full freight for Betts, Turner, Freeman, Smith against Corbin Burns. Just unlikely to be something I get to.
All righty. And now we're going to close it out. Mariners and Nats, hit that like button, everybody. Let's cruise up and over 200 likes. 4.5 run implied total for the Mariners, 2.8 for the Nats. Robbie Ray and Eric Fede. No one going to Fede. Everybody going to Ray. 36% owned or somewhere in that neighborhood. He is the highest owned pitcher on the slate. And even though it's not the best strikeout matchup in the world, it should be Robbie Ray today, in my opinion. 9,900. I just think he looks really, really good.
Yeah, it's a solid matchup against a really bad offense. Say what you want about the lack of strikeouts in it, but Ray gets plenty of strikeouts on his own. 28.5% strikeout percentage overall this year. If you wanted to nitpick, he does have a 26.5% strikeout percentage against righties compared to 37.9 against lefties. The Nationals have one lefty in their lineup. It's CJ Abrams batting 8th. So doesn't have the Batuta advantage there, but still a 2.7 implied run total, still pitching in a great pitcher's park in Seattle. He's 9,900, so he's less expensive than all of these other top tier guys. He's a little bit more expensive than Fried, but I'm not including him as top tier just because he doesn't have the same sort of strikeout stuff. So Ray, like I said before, he was in every single one of the top 100 projected lineups I made. 36% ownership, you could certainly argue, is probably a little bit high just because you do have all these other guys to go to. Like, I don't know that a $700 price difference between Ray and Burns is worth 3.5 times the ownership, or that a $100 price difference between Ray and Cease is worth more than 2x the ownership. But I do understand why Ray is the highest owned guy.
You and me both. He's the easiest cash option you're going to get to from pitching. That's for sure. We're not talking about Nats bats, correct?
Correct.
How you feeling about the Mariners? They are middle of the pack in top stack, middle of the pack in ownership. Are they middle of the pack to you?
Yeah, the park isn't great, but they do still have a 4.8 implied run total here against Fedde. I don't think Fedde's a horrible pitcher either, but certainly not a great one. 146 expected ISO to righties, 149 to lefties. Julio Rodriguez is expensive, but always gives you home run and stolen base upside. Jesse Winker, Mitch Haniger have decent price tags. JP Crawford did move down the lineup a little bit, so that sucks as far as shortstops go, but Mariners kind of just the middle of the road stack for me.
Sum it up. Favorite pitchers?
Rodon, Ray, Verlander, Fried, Cease. There's a lot of them.
Let's do this. Tell me the pitchers you don't like, which sounds like it's going to be an easier list here. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the ones I didn't just name. But
top
yeah, I mean,
stacks.
there's a lot of good pitching on the slate.
Top stacks.
This one's a lot more difficult for me, but I think Toronto, Colorado, Arizona, some Atlanta.
Blue Jays, Rockies, Red Sox, Rays. These are some of the spots that I'm pretty significantly over the field on. Go ahead and take a peek if you want to, guys. Keep an eye on the weather. Let the people of MLB Live Before Lock take you all the way to 7:05. If you got any weather questions, go ahead and ask those guys. For Adam, I'm Josh. Deeper Dive is over. Stay on this stream. Hit the like button on your way. Well, not on your way out the door, but while you sit here. We're out of here. Peace.
What's up, everybody? Ben Raza, Matt Kajeski here, and we want to tell you about all the exciting things we've got at Betting You, our college sports betting podcast that we're going to be breaking down each and every day, giving you the picks for college football. You can find it on the OddsShopper YouTube channel. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. Matt, I know you're the college football guru. Tell the people what they can expect each and every week.
Yeah, we're trying to take a high-level, data-driven approach, looking at the spreads and talking about these games on a weekly basis. We're also trying to give you an information edge college football. There's over 130 teams. There's a lot to stay up to date on. So early in the week, we'll be recording this show, giving you everything we think you need to know about the upcoming college football games.
Absolutely. Here's a little sneak peek of what you can expect each and every week. We're going to be diving into games. We're going to be answering questions. We're going to be doing all the fun things here at Betting You. It is time to bet some actual games. And Matt, I want to ask you, last week we got things started, talked a little transfers, talked just the landscape of college football. The off-season Heisman market, is that something that you look to in the futures? And is there kind of that formula where we can get an idea of who might be live to win this award?
Yeah, I think this is a beatable market. It's beatable primarily early in the offseason, and it rewards people that are following the news. They know the landscape of these teams. But not only that, you need to know who kind of traditionally wins the Heisman. There are a lot of really popular players out there that might not have the best odds and are actually kind of dead to win this award just based on the position they play, their conference, or maybe their team just isn't quite good enough to actually take down that Heisman Award. So I do think this is a beatable market and one I try to attack every single offseason.
You mentioned that Syracuse ultimately.
Calling out. I'm actually plugged into the router as I'm getting ready to go to weather.com.
Oh, that EMAC means he's literally plugged himself and he's in the neighbors.
All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMAC coming to you on another weekday. Gosh, those of you that have been around for the last 10 days are lucky because that makes 3 shows I've been on for the weekdays. Greg likes it when I do the run sheet on Saturday shows. It's a piece of cake on the weekday shows because the Deeper Dive does all the heavy lifting here for us. Greg, it is your actual birthday today. Yes. We're not joking about that. We would never joke about something as serious as a birthday, but I did go get a birthday hat for you to celebrate your 40th birthday.
All right.
Happy big 40, Greg.
Let me find some filters to put on here. I'm happy that you're bought into this. I should have gotten like a Burger King crown or something.
It would have been better. I think I can put this on so it'll stay. Yeah, we'll do this.
There we go. We might have to make you sing later.
Oh, good times ahead. But yes, we've got a full 15 game slate here. I think it's 15 games. There was a doubleheader earlier today that is on the DraftKings slate. It's not on the FanDuel slate. That would be Chicago and St. Louis. I know a few people are asking on Twitter where that game was on the top batters tool. The top batters tool focuses on the main slate. And I had them add that back in for you guys on DraftKings, the doubleheader. Thanks for reaching out and letting us know. Sometimes the doubleheaders, things kind of slide through. Doesn't just impact us. It impacts ESPN and a variety of other places as well. But we like to get that squared away. The reason I wanted to point that out is because we have free tools tonight. You get the Night Owl tools. All of the tools are free. Top batters tool is not going to be updated, but you get the top stacks tool for the late slate. You get the projections. You get all that for MLB. It's a good time. Is that a birthday hat or a piece of pizza? I think so. Jordan, I think we have a new idea here.
Yeah. So I wanted to find a birthday filter to put on here. And this is the one that in Zoom said is the birthday hat. It's pretty stupid looking. It just looks like there's a piece of pizza on me. I don't know why this is. So I guess it's supposed to be a birthday hat kind of shaped like pizza, but it just looks like pizza. It's terrible.
This is looks like pepperoni pizza upside down on your head. This is good. So food fight. Everybody at home, feel free to join in. It's time for a food fight here. But good times. Well, Greg will see what else he can find throughout the show. We, of course, here are sponsored by OddsShopper, so you're going to want to think about that. We'll talk a little bit about them as we go between pitching and offenses, talk about some of the bets that we like tonight. As I did mention, we have the DK Night Owl. The link is below us here in the video reference here, and we've got those tools are free. We also have NFL preseason. I believe the promo code is Herbert, I think now, and it is $7. $7. See, you could have used promo code Tua last week and gotten everything for $5. Price goes up. You know what? Well worth it. Well worth it. Worth its weight in gold over there on Prize Picks. But we got a Yotastic member at Osmo for 4 months. Member behind the scenes for a lot more than 4 months. He says, "Happy birthday, Greg. What's the narrative? Cheers and beers, brothers."
So the birthday narrative is just, then, by the way, we've switched up. This is the video filter I chose to go with. It's really more me. I think this one's really cool. The hat, that thing was garbage. But this one we're going with. And here's the issue I've realized. Once you select a video filter, I've never known because I've only done this as a bit at the end of shows. And I don't know how to take them off. So I have to find what I like now, because I think I'm stuck with this. But yeah, I like the glass. I think I'm gonna roll with the shades. But as far as I can't even remember what you were asking me before. I got so caught up in these stupid filters.
Oh, we were just talking a little bit about preseason here. I laughed at your glasses, but we're about ready to get into the pitching here. There is some weather in Boston. That is the one location that looks a little bit troublesome. With so many games on the slate, if you are risk adverse at all, there's no reason to go to this one. There's not like it's getting a lot of popularity, so you're not getting a ton of leverage. It looks like if they choose to wait around till around 9 o'clock, I'm just looking at the Weather Channel forecast weather in motion aspect. It looks like there's a fine window after that. Will they wait? I don't know. But that's an earlier lock. If they put it into a delay, then I would expect that they're going to wait it out. But it seems odd that they would postpone it, I think, Greg, unless the weather's really, really bad.
Yeah. So,
or they want the fans to come wait around the stadium and buy concessions for 90 minutes and then postpone it. The Nationals. We call that the Nationals.
The Nationals used to be, they're better with it now. Do you remember all the crazy weather decisions they used to make a few years ago? It was terrible. But right now, let's look at the latest Boston weather. Yesterday, we kind of nailed the weather on the show in terms of saying, like, hey, there's some chance of risk, but like ultimately I was looking at the radar. I was like, I don't know if teams are willing to wait a couple hours. I didn't think it was going to be too bad. So I did say there was some risk to be had, except I didn't have an issue with leaving it in my player pool. And I kind of feel the same today about the Boston-Toronto game, although this one, it could be raining for up to 3 hours. So, it once again, if they decide to wait it out, there's no rain the rest of the night, but there is a 3-hour window where they could get rain. So it's risky, but there's a pretty clear window to play. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But based on, I would assume it's a late start and they end up playing. Some risk involved, nothing that makes it unplayable though.
Yeah, and then they play again tomorrow and Thursday, both 7 o'clock games. So they could always slide in a doubleheader Thursday afternoon if they really wanted to, or Wednesday afternoon would not be a challenge. So we'll keep tabs on that. But again, if you're risk adverse, there's averse. I keep saying averse. There are many other ways we can go. Setting that all aside, we do have a plethora of pitchers up here at the top. Quite a few options and choices. We have both of the current Cy Young Award winners on the mound. We've got Carlos Rodon, who's top 5 in the NL. You've got Justin Verlander, who's in the mix in the AL as well. He also already has 2 Cy Young Awards himself, and I believe he has finished second twice, third once, fifth once, and sixth once. That's pretty impressive for him during his career. What are you looking at the cream of the crop? Is the ownership or popularity, as we like to call it, getting too intense on any of the top end options? Because of course, Coors Field's in play tonight too.
And by the way, Jordan Klein is not wrong. I was asked what I wanted to do for my birthday today, and it was do a baseball show with EMAC, specifically 15 games. The baseball acquiesced. They changed the schedule to make sure it's a 15-game slate I could do for EMAC. This is what I want to do for my birthday. So we got a lot of options at the high end of the pitching chart, like you said. And how many of these guys do you want to group together? EMAC, should we just do Robbie Ray in a above, or should we like what price point are we considering the highest?
Let's go with the Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, Carlos Rodon, and I'm missing one.
Corbin Burns.
Corbin Burns, that should be up there. That's kind of the top 5. Some of them have more difficult matchups than other. Some of them it's an absolute roller coaster ride whenever you roster them. Looking at you, Robbie Ray. But what would you like to do with that quintet of quintessential pitching?
Yeah. So one thing to point out here, pricing largely doesn't matter on this slate, right? Like, so it was a thing where early in the day, it's like, oh, like Rodon's 11,000 over on DK, over on FanDuel, he's 10,800. I thought this was going to matter earlier in the day. Then the lineups came down and I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter again. Because we've got, like the Texas Rangers lineup is so cheap today. Like we've got Cole Calhoun in the middle lineup, min price. Then you got guys that are playable at the end of the lineup, Bubba Thompson, min price. So we've got a bunch of different hitters that are really cheap in good spots today, where it's just for the millionth time. There's no issue with pricing. Like Lars Nootbaar, probably going to be leading off. Oh, look at Emac. Also, yours are knockoffs, though. They're not real like mine. Lars Nootbaar probably going to be leading off today. He is crushed right-handed pitching. He's really cheap. So ultimately, I come out, I build my lineups. The pricing doesn't matter all that much. So I just didn't find it all that difficult to get to some of the guys that I wanted to get to here. Now, in terms of some of the ownership and whatnot, I think the safest plays for cash games are going to be Rodon and Ray. Rodon because of the matchup against the Tigers, Robbie Ray because of, number one, the matchup against your Washington Nationals, who is guaranteed will get no hit at some point this year. Could it be tonight? Maybe, maybe not. But it's also price point on Robbie Ray, him being a little bit cheaper. We got him projected higher than a lot of those other guys. So in terms of the most safety, I do think it's Rodon and Ray. In terms of the one I like the most for tournaments, I'm gravitating towards Dylan Cease. He's only 10,000. I don't think the matchup against Baltimore is all that difficult. He did give up more than one earned run in his last start for the first time in about 3 months, but it was a tough matchup against the Houston Astros. And by and large part, he's been so consistently good. So Cease right now projected for 6% ownership on FanDuel, and then on DK only 13% ownership. I really like him at that kind of ownership number.
All right. My thoughts on it were Robbie Ray is the adventurous choice, of course. Now that Juan Soto and Josh Bell are out, Nationals, not too scary. They have Nelson Cruz, former Mariner, 42 years old, just got his 10th home run of the season this weekend. And then after that, it's 30-year-old rookie Joey Meneses, who has 15 hits in his 17 games, or 15, he's got multiple hits in some of those. It's because pitchers aren't afraid of him. They're just challenging him. I mean, who's worried about a 30-year-old rookie? So in any event, I had to do the glasses old school, but it's a little hard to do the show with those. Greg has the fancy electronic ones, but
whoa. Don't be giving away the secret radio, Mac. These are real. I paid good. Well, I didn't pay. These are birthday present. I got them. Somebody paid good money for it.
All right. But so for me, Robbie Ray is a bit of an adventure. I'm curious to see, we'll probably have one more projection or popularity run here in the ownership projections before we go to lock. I'm curious to see where Ray shakes out. I like the fact that there's so many teams on the slate tonight. There's no need to really go to him if you don't want to, but it's also looking like he's not going to get that massive concentration that we generally see on the traditional Robbie Ray nights, where it becomes a fun differentiation point to come in under the field and just hope he kind of implodes. Guess what? That didn't work last year most of the time, as he ended up winning the American League Cy Young, but that is something that's in play. This is such a weak lineup though for the Nationals. It's hard to find ways you would go want to go that route, because again, your two best hitters combined are 72, so kind of the same age as me and Greg. He's 40, I'm 32. So
exactly a couple young. By the way, I'm totally washed. And to bring this into the Albert Pujols point too, the fact that like I know what it feels like to wake up at 32 compared to like 25. And I could only imagine then that gets, even more so when I get to be your age, Mac. Like the fact that your wife is running marathons is crazy to me. Like I couldn't imagine doing it. Like I think, how long's a marathon?
It's 26.2. She will be the first day. She does half marathons, but she's doing 2 full marathons between now and the end of the year. So it's like, whatever. She on Labor Day weekend, she will complete her 200th half marathon lifetime.
So like, I dislocated my knee at one point. I do get knee pain from time to time. And like, so the idea that Albert Pujols has all of a sudden gotten way better at age 42 at baseball than he was at 32, like, come on, what are we doing here? But I mean,
you know how many home
like,
runs he has in his last 30 days? This is courtesy of T. McBee. He sent this.
Was it 7 or 8 or something?
8. He's
8,
22 of 48 with 8 home runs, 9 total runs. So he's only going to cross home plate if he gets the RBI for himself. But a 1.509 OPS. That's just nuts.
I just want his chemist. That's all I want. Just give me a contact. I want your chemist. I want to know what's being put in your body. I don't want to be cool like that when I'm 42. I want to be hitting dongs, right? I don't want to be waking up with knee pain and whatnot. I want to be Albert Pujols. I want to be better at 42 than I am at 32. Anybody who thinks that he's just not putting anything that's maybe a little shade in your body, naive. You're out of your mind. He is, and I don't give a shit. That's what everybody should be doing once they get to 42. There's no downside, right? So right now, if he takes nothing, he's probably not on a big league roster. Or he sucks. The upside is he's still good. He's a viable, like, big league player. And the other thing too is drug testing is always going to be behind drug use, because you know what the banned substance list is. You hire a team of chemists and you go, make me something that's going to make me better that isn't on this list. And then they go do it. And then eventually, baseball or whatever drug testing finds out about, they add it to the list, and then you just make new compounds. There's no risk involved unless you're an idiot like Fernando Tatis, who's getting in motorcycle accidents also. If you know what you're doing, you're never going to get caught. You get better at baseball. You extend your career into your 40s. Come on, let's get this on. Let's get everybody doing this.
All right. Well, you know what didn't make me feel spry and spring out of bed? Centrum Silver, especially after my wife made it a point to go buy it for me when I turned 50. I need the good stuff too. I've decided that you're correct. Whatever Albert has, I'll take 2.
Yeah. We need to start using TRT. I think that's the answer, Emac.
All right. Mid-tier of pitching. The one I kind of like the best myself is going to be, scrolling down to my notes, Pablo Lopez. He's been incredibly unlucky over his last 6 appearances. He has a 7.20 ERA and just a 4.18 FIP. In these 30 innings, he does have 30 strikeouts. And he's also played Atlanta, San Diego, and the Mets, who are premier offenses in these games. So I kind of like him as the SP2 in some of these builds. How are you? And I think he's okay on FanDuel as well. But there's so many top-end options that have a much better path to the quality start, and you need those points in tournaments that I don't know that I'd really go outside of those top 5. But on DraftKings and Yahoo, we have to play too. How are you feeling about Lopez? Would you roll the dice with Nick Lodolo? Do you think Frankie Montas has been jinxed? Max Fried gets a matchup against the Pirates. We've got a pretty robust second tier.
So there is in terms of name value, but once again, we've got so many pitchers on DraftKings that are really high upside pitchers on the high end. And we've got all these hitters that are cheap. And maybe you don't like some of these individual cheap hitters. The opportunity cost of playing a 2K guy as a hitter and mixing and matching him into lineups, it's not that great, right? If they have a dud, so be it. But I'd much rather go with one of these 2K hitters like a Cole Calhoun or a Bubba Thompson, and that will allow me to go from, say, like a Lodolo or a Pablo Lopez up to the likes of like a Robbie Ray or a Dylan Cease. Like, that's a trade-off I like a lot. So we could talk about some of these guys and who we think are, targetable to some extent in large field GPPs, but I also want to make it clear that none of them are priorities for me. Okay. And one other thing also I should point out is because it's my birthday and I have plans after this, I'm only playing one lineup today. I feel like I was kind of obligated to get some action on it. But I'm not going to be able to manage 150 lineups because it's Taco Tuesday. Got family plans. But in terms of how I do approach the slate, if I was playing 150 lineups, I still think I would just mostly be concentrated on the top end guys and mixing in some of the lower ends. But I'm curious to ask you, Emac, as you're building out lineups, assuming you're playing more than the one lineup I'm playing, like, do you really find it necessary to get to a lot of these cheap guys? Because I think a lot of them are decent looking, but it's just hard to say they're the best plays on the slate at pitcher for tournaments.
Yeah, I don't. We have all. It looks like we have all of the lineups with the exception of the Brewers and then the doubleheader game. So I'm going to start crunching lineups because I'm really not worried about the representation of those games or those teams in any event, just because there are so many people on the slate. So I'll be curious to see where we go. I just pulled up the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer, and I see I'm probably going to pick most of the pitchers, it's the cutoff here is around 25% everybody. So everybody is relatively well spread out. I will probably come around 25%, which is going to match the field on most of them. Normally what I would do in this situation is we end up getting players around 40-ish%, and then I'll just put everybody at 30 and just come way under. There are so many good options. I don't feel the need to really undercut the field today because there's so many other ways that you could just get there. So I don't want to undercut the field on this whole group. I would rather do some mixing and matching with them. And then on, say, a third of my lineups that don't kind of have one of those core fives, or a 30% of my population, it could, or my player pool could be as much as 40%. I'll expect, the Ranger Suarez. I'll probably tamp down a little bit on Corbin Burns. Corey Kluber, an interesting option going against the Angels. He has been adequate these days. Mike Clevenger, adequate. Nick Lodolo, strikeout upside is there. He does have some home run issues. So for those guys where the field is only in single digits, I'll probably set those guys to 15%. And those are the people that I will accept for hopefully a higher upside if it comes to fruition. But it's hard to say. I mean, what are the odds of somebody outside of Robbie Ray, Rodon, Lopez, Verlander, Fried, and Cease leading the slate tonight in points? That's a tough ask right there. So I don't think this is one where you really need to get cute. I also don't think you need to get overweight on any one of these really impressive options here. And I think the mixing and matching with the hitters is going to be the way to go. I don't mind coming in lower on Coors Field if we need to. I don't think the prices were as broken as they were last.
The Rangers prices are the Rangers.
Calhoun, Tavares, Duran, they're broken.
Yeah, it's so. Let me bring it up. It's not the stack that I'm rolling with today in my lineup. I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but I do have hitters in them because I don't know if I just say what the lineup is now, then people are going to turn off. We gotta tease it a little bit and wait till we get to the stacks in 15 minutes. But yeah, if you look at some of the pricing of the Rangers today, it's fairly broken. And one thing that is nice is with it being a 15-game slate, at least the ownership isn't too crazy on this team. But yeah, it's pretty cheap, especially on DraftKings. We've got Cole Calhoun, like I said, right in the middle of lineup min price, Bubba Thompson min price. There are only 3 hitters in the entire lineup that are more expensive than 3,600. Like the pricing isn't great here.
All right, looking at our hitters by comparison, only Marcus Semien is at 20% or higher on DraftKings, and he's like at 20%. So that's also indicating that even though the Rangers are the most popular stack, they're not dominating like we saw the San Francisco teams or the way some of those other slates shook out in last week. So I will probably set my hitter cap around 14% would be my guess, just to try to make sure I push it towards some of those less popular options. I'm okay going under on hitters. That really never bothers me because, so we always say, Mike Trout, whatever, anybody can go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. And while it's much harder to catch lightning in a bottle, you could see somebody go crazy. A Brandon Crawford 2 home run night, but while unlikely, it's in the realm of outcomes. And then now you say that across the entire player pool, all right, it becomes a little trickier to really pinpoint the hitters on this one. At the lowest tier, I'm assuming I probably won't get any Zach Logue. I probably won't go with Montas, no Brubaker. I doubt I get to Suarez, no Austin Voth. So it's pretty much going to be about 14 or so pitchers, heavily concentrated on the top 5 of Ray, Rodon, Lopez, Verlander, Fried, and Cease. I guess that's 6. I'm moving Burns a little bit out of that, but I'm okay with Ranger Suarez, Corey Kluber. That's kind of the break point there, is the Corey Kluber of all people.
Suarez's ownership is confusing to me because he's starting to get really popular. And so a couple of talking points at pitcher. So earlier today, like I wasn't super high on Corbin Burns relative to the other high-end pitchers on slate because he's on the road pitching against the Dodgers. It's so much more difficult than the matchups, Rodon against the Tigers, Robbie Ray against the Nationals, Verlander at home against the Twins, Cease against the Orioles. The Burns matchup is so much more difficult than the other ones. And at least earlier today, Burnes was only projected for 6% ownership, if I remember correctly, on DK. It was like 6% on DK and 2% on FanDuel. Now he's still only 2% on FanDuel, but DK is up to 12%. It's harder for me to stomach it at 12%. When I play Dylan Cease at a projected 13% ownership against the Orioles, that seems way more favorable to me to get to Cease at the same ownership, a cheaper price point against the Orioles, as opposed to Corbin Burnes pitching against the Dodgers. And then the other one, like I was saying before, Ranger Suarez has gotten really popular today as well, 17%. That's way more than I want to play Ranger Suarez. While he has a good matchup against the Reds, he's a guy with a strikeout rate barely over 20% this year. And I just don't think he has the same upside as the pitchers who are just priced slightly above him.
All right, excellent. So yeah, once I usually put my run of the popularity into, I don't use our site with Fantasy Cruncher. I use their other site, but then I have both, so I can help troubleshoot. You guys, if you want the cheaper version or a more economical version, it is a pass-through cost for us, but Fantasy Cruncher is offering us a more slimmed-down version that does come preloaded with updates for our projections, as well as ownership for the different sports. It's the same functionality and same everything else that they have. I just happen to been using the regular version for a long time because I've done beta testing for them and stuff in the past. And it's easier for me to troubleshoot, say if this is broken, but the Osmo's not, I can help them figure out what fell apart more quickly. But you guys can get that through us. You can also, if you're wondering and you want to get the accurate projections, popularity, stacks, all of the good stuff, you can always use the promo code. Oh, which promo code are we on? I believe it's, is it MLB?
MLB
LBL?
Live, MLB Live.
Yeah. I see that for some reason I managed to copy up. I copied in all the right information and then overwrote it by copying up our Saturday's run sheet. So I'm like, why do I have these things here? This is not what I was looking at earlier. But MLB Live will get you 50% off any 1 week package. You want to go with the premium, 50% off. You want to go with the MLB only, 50% off. It's an excellent deal. You definitely want to take advantage of it. Also gets you into the Discord channel. I always want to say Slack, but the Discord channel, et cetera, et cetera. It's good times there. It's a lot of fun. Plus you can keep tabs on what Greg's up to 24/7. It's a lot of fun. He has a whole camera channel set up that allows you to see what he's doing at any point in time. So,
yeah, it gets uncomfortable sometimes when I shower, but I get it. It's what the people pay for. What can you do? The people want what the people want. And I'm a monkey, right? I just dance whatever people want me to do. It's if it's a couple likes, a couple thumbs up on the Discord or whatever, my ego starts going and just whatever the people ask for.
How did I manage to completely screw up this run sheet? I don't know. I'm a little annoyed by that. I should have known, but
it's your first time doing a show, Mac. It's okay. It happens.
Not even my first time on a Tuesday in this week. I did one last Tuesday, right? When Sundacker was a little under the weather.
Oh, that's true.
Say. So
that's
I
true. By the way,
but you actually did that run sheet, to be fair.
Big update in the Discord channel, by the way.
Ooh.
The logo and the name has been changed to Stokastic. It was the old name for a while. We're Stokastic in Discord. I'm very excited about this. I've been pushing for this for a while now. It's been a big thing of mine.
Very nice. Well, happy birthday from Stokastic to you, Greg.
I'm pretty excited. This was my birthday present from the company. Was getting the Discord channel changed to Stokastic.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't ask for the channel to be named after you. That was your one birthday wish. It went away rapidly there.
What are we going to be, Grego or something?
Something along those lines. Third leg Greg, something like that.
Also, people want to ask us questions in the Discord during the show. At us, at myself, at EMAC. We could answer your questions during the show. Trying to get that going. We get a lot of questions for basketball, less so for baseball. But if you guys are watching and you have questions to ask us, add us in the Discord. We can answer some of those questions about the slate, about life, whatever it is that you want to know about. Just add us in Discord.
All right. I'm so angry with myself. I'm putting in the actual correct run sheet stuff, even though I've gone over most of it. How silly is that?
What do you even need the run sheet for on live?
Because the different days they change the promo codes, the different shows, and we change them. Sometimes it's MLB LBL, and then it's MLB Live.
No, it's always MLB.
Show.
Oh my god, no, EMAC. Oh my god, it's always MLB Live on Live Before Lock.
Not always. Sometimes it's MLB Live if Eric's on.
It could be that if Eric's on, if we're trolling him in chat.
Producer
You'll be
Jordan,
good.
are
You'll
we
be
going to
good. You
do an
don't need to-
Osmo Hall of Fame here?
What's that?
All right. Well, let's talk a little more pitching. We'll do an Osmo Hall of Fame. I haven't gotten to do one of these in a while, and I do have the read up for that. So that's fun, and that's giving back to the community. So it doesn't count as a read. That's my gift to you. My birthday gift to Greg is the Stokastic Hall of Fame going to you all, so you can celebrate the victories that we have with some of our compatriots here. Without getting fully into stacks, which of the most disaster oriented pitchers here intrigues you? Is there anybody that you just go against every single time they're on the slate?
Ooh, okay. So that's interesting. Let's see. On the low end of pitchers today, are there any pitchers that have just
Austin
been like
both doesn't always get blown up? Taijuan Walker not giving up a ton of power. That was somebody I wanted to target. Ranger Suarez has been very serviceable. JT Brubaker's having some moments. You look at his 3-year numbers, not great. Recently, a little bit better. While I like Atlanta, he's someone we usually look at. I guess it would be Josh Winkowski or Drew Hutchison would be the two that I would just automatically say play people against those guys. Even Jose Suarez has been incredibly lucky. Still not striking very many people out, but not allowing runs. He doesn't seem like the gimme that it once was. Jake Woodford, Adrian Sampson, I don't really know what to do with them. I found him. John Heasley.
Yeah, so Heasley's awful, right? Expected ERA over 6 doesn't generate swing and misses. In terms of the pitcher, though, that if we're taking, like Coors Field, always playable, but in terms of the pitcher that I think is maybe the worst on the slate, a combination of the pitcher being bad and then also going up against a good offense, Aaron Sanchez. Remember, there was a point in time where Aaron Sanchez looked like he was going to be a good, viable big league pitcher, and he's just had so many injuries, and the velocity is not there anymore. So when he first got called up to the big leagues by the Blue Jays, this guy was throwing 97, 98 miles per hour, could touch 100 miles per hour. Now we've seen so many injuries from Sanchez that he is now down to a 92.5 mile per hour average fastball velocity. His numbers this year, 7.68 ERA, 4.83 expected ERA. And considering the amount of hard contact he gives up, I don't even know that we could say it's bad luck. Like, nobody probably should have a 7.68 ERA other than like Jose Urena. But, even the 4.83 expected ERA, 4.93 FIP, it might even be overselling Aaron Sanchez. So with that in mind, I think that he is probably overall the worst pitcher on the slate in the most difficult matchup.
All right. Did you know that the Nationals actually designated him for assignment? And he said, you know what? I'm not going to the minors. The rest of the league said, yeah, we're not claiming you. Sat out on the wire for about 2 months. Minnesota went to him. He went to AAA with them after pitching 1 start. So he's going to be back. He made 2 starts with the St. Paul Saints. So assuming he doesn't get destroyed, he should be able to throw 70 or 80 pitches. I'll kind of be shocked if he gets much over 50 before they get the hook. If Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Bregman, Altuve, et cetera, are doing their work. I still think going against Heasley is the way to go. So Heasley, bit of a disaster, allowed a pair of home runs in 3 of his last 6 starts, 8 total in that time frame. Lefties have found success against him this year. 297 ISO. Righties been pretty good with the 180 ISO. That's borderline. Elite's 200, but 180 is like, you're pretty good. They're righties only striking out 13.4%. Ketel Marte had been dealing with the hammy. He should be good to go. Didn't see the lineup where Varsho was in. He's been bouncing around the lineup. He's been slumping a little bit, but he's back up to the 5 spot. So I kind of like going against Heasley, but Sanchez definitely on the short list there as well. All right, producer Jordan, we ready for the fun? All right, the Osmo Hall of Fame, or Stokastic Hall of Fame, as we like to call it officially now that everything has changed, including the Discord for Greg's birthday. We have stokastic.com/avatar. That's where you can pick up the Stokastic avatar. You download that, you put it onto your different DFS sites as your logo. And as you win, tweet at Stokastic HOF. That stands for Stokastic Hall of Fame. Stokastic HOF, your wins. If you finish top 3 in any contest with at least 5,000 entries, top 3, no ties, you can tie for first, but you can't mass tie for first. If 3 of you tie for first, you win. 200 people tie for first. Sorry, it's only the top 3 scores and you would now be one of the top 200 scores. So check that out. That'll get you 33 days of Stokastic premium content. Rich Green is our first person here, and Rich had one heck of a night. $200,000 takedown of UFC. The variance in that final fight broke his way, but pretty awesome. He says this kick will be shown for years to come, and I'll always have a little something extra to remember that night. Unbelievable ending. Thanks to everybody at Stokastic.com. 200,000 for him. That's pretty awesome. If I remember correctly, I think he also had, there was at least one other logo in the top 10 that night, and I think he might have had one as well. We have Jason in chat. I got to hang out with Jason in Nashville. He's a lot of fun. J187, for those of you that don't know. Yet another big win for him, $23,000. He's always in the Discord. Very incredibly good with Excel. Does a lot of statistical regression and all that extra stuff. I think the day job asked him to come back to work, and he said, "Nah, I'm going to do DFS full time." He's living the dream, Greg, but he's definitely doing a lot here, or doing a lot with the Stokastic tools. Tito Papito had a nice $25,000 victory. Says, "This one's to you, Greg. Appreciate your videos, guys. Handmade a few lineups, and this happened. You're the best in the business." Happy birthday, Greg. You're the best in the business. Anthony Jimenez says he appreciates us bringing the fire last night. Been watching you for years. Broke down a $10,000 win. And then we round this out with Oroso Music. He says, your boy is back. Big finish of the season. Preseason is perfect practice. $5,000 victory there. And then Justin Tope wraps it out. 4 different single game contests on FanDuel in 2 days. Cha-ching is the other way to say that more quickly. But you too can jump in on the Stokastic Hall of Fame. It's a lot of fun. Stokastic.com/avatar. All right, stacks at the tippy top, Greg. I guess let's start with Coors Field because that's what the people would like to hear about. What are you looking at for that game? The individual call-outs of any of the hitters would be
I think we group some of this stuff together because I've got a lot of birthday wishes came through in the Discord channel, but then also OG Stock asked favorite stack and pitcher. And we also had a super chat somewhere.
Anthony Fiala. We're saving that, but we'll just tee it up. When you get ready to unveil your single entry stack, that will be Anthony Fiala.
We're going to do it right now because he asked me about Coors Field, and it's the Rockies.
You always undercut the Rockies. Do tell.
No. I usually undercut opposing teams at Coors Field, not necessarily the Rockies, because at least this year, there's been times in the past. This year, the Rockies are hardly ever popular. And, I don't think Dane Dunning is bad by any means. I think he's a pretty solid pitcher. But we're getting a Rockies team that is at home at Coors Field, fairly modest ownership. By the way, they're the favorites in this game. They have a considerably higher team total than the Texas Rangers, yet it's the Rangers who are picking up double the ownership of the Rockies. So when it comes to Dane Dunning, once again, I don't think he's bad. He has a 4.06 ERA, a 4.15 expected ERA. Here's the concern, though, about him going in Coors Field. His strikeout rate is way down this year, only a 20.1% K rate, where the last few years he's been, like a 22 to 25% K rate pitcher. This is just not the spot to be giving up contact, Coors Field. So I think this is a spot for the Rockies. It's going a little bit overlooked by the field. We've got pretty modest ownership projected here, right around 5% for them as a team. So it's a spot that I really like getting overweight to when it comes to the Rockies. So from Anthony Fiala, my stack that I'm playing in single entry tonight is the Rockies, OG Stock. It's the Rockies. And then he also wanted to know what my favorite pitcher is today, OG Stock. And relative to ownership in large field tournaments, it's Dylan Cease.
All right. So how do you feel about going against Herman Marquez then with Texas?
Yeah. So as of right now,
the ghost of Herman Marquez, because it's not the guy we've seen the last few years. This is the hologram, if you will.
No, and in previous years, I always felt bad for him because it was like, oh, this is a pitcher who throws really hard. He's really talented, but is just always going to get screwed by Coors Field. And it was an issue too, where I was like, this is going to really kill his earning potential throughout his career. And he's a pitcher who really was good on the road in previous years. He sucks at home and on the road this year. And it's problematic for him, obviously, in general. But then you look at his home road splits, and he has been slightly better at Coors Field. Strikeout rate 20.1% at home compared to 16.8% on the road, but still it's a 4.84 FIP for him at Coors Field. One thing when it comes to the Texas Rangers, the prices are totally broken, but there are so many spots on the slate. A 15-game slate, a lot of different teams to target, a lot of bad pitchers on the slate. Only 11.5% projected ownership for the Rangers. I don't really think it's that big of an issue. I don't want to get that high if I was playing 150 lineups. I don't think that there's any one team that warrants having double-digit ownership. We don't have any team right now in our top stacks tool with double-digit odds being the highest scoring team. But with that in mind, the Rangers are a little bit overowned, but not to the point where they're unplayable. And there's a lot of cheap hitters that I think make sense as one-offs today.
All right. I do see that Thomas Kane he's won the chat for the moment. Says, listen, morons, I got to go. Hot date. Play Ryan McCann 3 hours in 3 hours. You're welcome. I got to go. Charday is waiting. I hit the like.
There we go. I mean, listen, the fact that he names his blow up dolls is admirable, but hey, whatever you got going on, Thomas, I'm with you. By the way, I like Ryan McCann a whole bunch today. He said Ryan McCann. I think he means McMahon, right?
Oh yeah, probably.
He said McCann, but I just assume he means Ryan.
He's pre-gaming for his Charday music session.
Yeah. He's pouring beer down her open mouth that doesn't move.
It's a visual I can't unsee anymore. Great. Oh, by the way, I hope the surgery goes well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we got that idiot who was messaging me on Twitter. Because it happens inevitably where people just, if you're in DFS, there's money involved. People, lump you into conspiracy theories and not. But it's always funny to me when people tell me I'm doing stuff that I just know isn't true. Do you remember when there was the guy a couple years ago who was convinced I was getting fed information from the Warriors front office?
Yes, like for sure from Steve Kerr. He would text you first.
Yeah. And the thing that was crazy about it is his evidence was that I was playing Draymond Green after he was scratched and I was overweight to the field on Draymond Green. So what he was saying is that I was playing Draymond Green because I knew that he wasn't going to play and I didn't want the field to know if they looked at my lineups that I was getting inside information. It's like the dumbest logic I've ever heard. But this guy was coming at me aggressively on Twitter. Like at first I thought maybe he was trolling, but he was taking it really seriously. And then he ended up deleting his account because I was making fun of him for it. It was the dumbest conspiracy theory ever. I'm intentionally playing a player who's getting late scratched because I know he's not going to play. So I don't want people to catch on. Like I must be the worst cheater ever.
I can't believe you made him delete his account because he was accusing Adam as well of ducking.
Oh no, not this guy.
This was a different one.
This is a different guy.
They all start to run together for me after a while.
Yeah,
you guys seem to attract a lot of.
Yeah, so I mean, you get these people that pop up every once in a while, but there's no way to prove.
I'm sorry, the Steve Kerr guy. Yeah,
the Steve Kerr guy deleted. Gotcha. But there's other stuff too, where if somebody's just like, I know you cheat at DFS, like I don't, but like, how do I prove I don't? Like, there's no way. There's no way to prove it.
Oh, this is ridiculous. I believe is the word. But here we go. Let's see. What else can we talk about? Let's talk about some of the any differentiation stacks. Just secondary stacks. We don't need to differentiate tonight. Greg already pointed out nobody's really splashing the puddle at this point. So I think we can, you shouldn't play anybody that makes you feel uncomfortable. But what combination would you look towards? We haven't done a large slate like this in quite some time. So I usually don't get to do the Friday slates, but is there a particular combination you would look for to hope for differentiation? So like if you're going with Texas and another popular lineup, would you do something different with your pitchers? Or what if you're going with two popular stacks, what would you tweak with your pitching?
I have to be honest, I really don't think ownership is too problematic today. One thing I do think makes a lot of sense is Dylan Cease, I guess, in Texas Ranger stack, just because I think he's going so overlooked today as a pitching option. So if you're playing Dylan Cease, I think you've got a pretty different looking Texas Ranger stack. But, as is, like we said, we've got them projected for, 11.5% ownership. I'm just going to refresh this to make sure it hasn't changed because it was considerably higher earlier in the day. But yeah, 11.5% ownership on DK, 8.4% on FanDuel. And then we've got the Blue Jays, 10.3% on DK, 7% or 10.3% on FanDuel, 7% on DK. There's no team that I think is so overowned to the point that they're unplayable today, which that'll happen on a 15-game slate. It's spread out. There's no one team that really stands out. Oh, by the way, we just got an ownership update as I was talking. 14% projected ownership for Texas. That is a little rich for me now. That's starting to get a little high.
That's fine. That's I set my caps on most teams at 10, just because that mathematically that's not going to be a problem tonight. So I've just got my crunches off and running. They'll slowly slog through, just because when you go that low on your team caps, it takes some time to figure things out. I've got the randomness up at 35%, and I set a minimum floor of 80 just because I'm going to let it go. Most of these, or 90 tonight, most of these will come through reasonably well. It looks like your premier lineups are kind of coming in between like 110, let's call it 103 to 110. So that should get a nice cross section of things. I tend to do some 4-4 stacks, some 4-3 stacks, and some 5-0 stacks, and then I reserve the last 10 to 25% of my lineups, probably a little more today, and I pick out specific stacks and just make lineups 10 at a time, hitting on the key hitters that I want. If I feel that I've got too many or overweight somewhere or underweight somewhere in this. So, all right, let's get back here. News God says the postponement risk for Boston is going to be 25-ish%. They are going to start in a delay, he says. So thank you for doing the heavy lifting on that for us, News God. I'm assuming you're not playing anybody in your one lineup from that game. Would that 25% risk be enough to get you just to back off with so many other options tonight?
No, not really. It's just there's other offenses I like a little bit better. It's funny, earlier in the day, actually, that was going to be my single entry stack, was the Blue Jays, but they just ended up, their ownership went up a little bit from this morning. Not anything crazy, but the Rockies, just because the Rockies have a few less ownership percentage points, it just ended up rating out as a little bit better of a stack for me. But I think both of them, if in large field tournaments, are worth being overweights of the field too, because I still think the Toronto game against Boston is far more likely to play than not. So I think the spot against Josh Winkowski is a really good one. I think Winkowski's terrible. He is an unranked prospect, doesn't have good stuff, making his debut this year as a rookie. Got off to a decent start from ERA perspective, but the underlying stats were never good. He's got like a 13% K rate. He gives up a lot of contact. Always problematic against an offense that has much firepower as the Toronto Blue Jays do. So the pick I gave out in my betting video today for the hottest down pick of the day was Vlad Jr. to homer at plus 450. But no, it's not anything that scares me off the game.
All right. You still feeling good about your Baltimore under 1.5 runs in the first 5 innings? I watched your video today. You can find that over there on OddsShopper. Greg puts that out every day.
Yes, assuming the line or the odds haven't changed.
I did not write those down. I just wrote down your picks.
Yeah.
Because I assume your picks are gold, that you have the Midas touch. And it's your birthday, so of course they're going to win.
I
so
like that you
parlay those together with my mortgage.
Yeah, I'm not able to. I'm not able to. I don't really watch anybody else on our channel's content for no purpose other than like I'm doing my own shows and my own stuff during the day. Like, when do I have time to watch other people's stuff? Like, what am I doing right now? I'm doing a baseball show. I can't watch a baseball show at the same time. But yeah, I thought that was a bet that made sense. Was under 1.5 runs for the Orioles in the first 5 innings, which correlates to me liking Dylan Cease in DFS. Kind of the same reasons. I think that's he's just being a little bit undervalued today. In terms of other stacks, is there any stack that you like way more than every other team on the slate? Because I really do think this is a slate to be spread out by offense a little bit.
I think it does, and I think we kind of hit on them. I don't want to muck up my crunch by opening too many tabs, but I went through, and the teams that I went above the 5% cap, I did go 7% on each of the New York teams. I don't know that I'll get there, but if I ended up squeezing some of the leftover salary that way, I have no issues with that. 7% for Atlanta. I do like the Atlanta stack here. There'll be one that I make sure I get with my last set of lineups that I go in and lock some players by hand, along with Tampa Bay going against Jose Suarez. Not as crazy about going against Jose Suarez, because sometimes he does just magically get away with very few runs allowed. But he is someone that can give up the long ball, and if anybody's on base, it's a good situation for that. And there's enough righty power in Tampa Bay. I wanted to be a little bit above that. Chicago, I went 7%. Kansas City, I went 7%. Arizona, I went 9%. Houston, I went 10%. And then I wanted to join you a little bit on Colorado, so I went 7% there, and then 9% on the Mariners, just to wrap it up. They're going against Eric Fede. We hadn't really talked about them. He missed the last month. I want to say it was with a sore shoulder. He is back and still not great. He's 29 and whatevs. He's a major league pitcher, but then you get the Nationals bullpen, which is not good either. Mariners have been I don't even think it's sneaky good anymore. Top third of the league against righties, top 5 against lefties. So their offense is really humming. It's a little cooler tonight in Seattle compared to a lot of the other locations. So it's not the best offensive environment, but a 4.8 implied run total's relatively solid. They're definitely a good play on the 4-game late slate or the 2-game really late slate. But I wanted to get a little bit of them going against the Nationals on the main slate. So I guess to summarize, not a synopsis, but to summarize, Seattle, Colorado to join you, Houston and Arizona would be my big ones. And the one I just noticed didn't come up much in my first crunch was Atlanta. So I will put my thumb on the scale for them.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to look through. Let's see if we can find if we were telling people to play a really low owned stack today. Let me see if any of these teams make sense for like sub 1% ownership in large field GPPs. So there's a couple that stand out to me. In the list I made, I noticed there's no teams you're really getting to that are like sub 1% on DMAC.
Of the ones I shouted out?
Yeah, none of those were like the sub 1% on teams, right?
I don't believe so. I'm opening. I have a pause between crunches, so I'm going to open the top batters. When I'm on shows and even though I'm plugged into the router, I get a little nervous about going to too many different windows here. And I went to the top batters. I will go to the top stacks tool. So let's see. Kansas City was the one I was curious to see where everybody was going to land on.
They're pretty popular against Zach Davies. That is
interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be on that one as much because Zach Davies he's one of those guys that, will he give up 4 or 5 earned runs and scuffle along in good or bad starts? Yes. But he usually doesn't get blown up. And that's kind of something we want to see with pitchers that can facilitate crooked numbers. As I look down towards the bottom, no, I guess really not. If I look at that's top stack percentage, where is it?
So if anybody was looking to take a stab on a team that's picking up no ownership in large field tournaments, here are the two that make sense to me. One is the Mets going up against Frankie Montas. Montas has really struggled since getting traded to the Yankees. And I think it's twofold. Number one, I think it could be just him being uncomfortable in a new situation, and a really high pressure situation too. How many pitchers over the years or just players in general, like Joey Gallo, for instance, Joey Gallo, and I don't think this is untrue, Joey Gallo has directly said that the Yankees fans and how he was treated had an impact on his performance. He's been considerably better since getting traded to the Dodgers. And then somebody like Frankie Montas, he has played in a number of tough matchups since getting traded to the Yankees. I believe he's only pitched against really good teams. I'll pull this up to be true. I remember reading it off this morning. It was, 3 starts for the Yankees. Cardinals, Red Sox, Blue Jays. Another tough one today against the Mets. But the other thing, too, is don't forget, Montas was hurt right before getting traded, and they were slowly building him up. So he went from a pitcher that was hurt, was throwing very limited pitches in starts, and was working his way back from injury. All of a sudden, like, hey, you're on the Yankees. Here's high pressure, high leverage situations, as opposed to just pitching for the A's. That's a lot of stress to add to a pitcher who's also trying to build up his arm strength and trying to get his, just his stamina back underneath him. So I have concerns about Frankie Montas right now. The Mets only 0.6% projected ownership. That makes sense to me. The other one, too, is the Padres against Aaron Savali. I don't think Savali is a particularly great pitcher. Not that he's terrible, but this Padres offense has a lot of talent in it with Juan Soto added to the mix. And even if they haven't shown that since the trade, I think they're going to get going sooner rather than later. So if anybody's to ask me which unowned teams that nobody's playing in large field tournaments make sense, I would say the Mets and the Padres.
All right, those are good ones. In the Mets, even though I created more than 120% of my stacks for the double stack, so it's not forcing any into the Mets. I'm not picking up any at all with where it is. So that's one that, as I mentioned, probably worth putting the thumb on the scale. I'd still say I'd put in the Yankees against Taijuan Walker a little bit. I can't believe that Houston is just coming in at 4. Do you have 4.8%, right, on your version? Oh, and the top stacks tool is free today. Let me drop that into Slack. or into the
It is.
YouTube.
Top stacks, still free to use. Who could do it first? Me or Emac? Oh, God damn it, Emac won. He's quick. He's quick.
I told you, I've got that page open now. I got Cruncher running over on this other screen.
I'm telling you, if I was a little bit younger, if it wasn't my birthday, my heyday, I would have got that link in before you. The Astros, not all that much ownership, 4.8%. Once again, there's no teams where the ownership's really problematic. We talked about before the Texas Rangers. I would say they're getting a little bit too popular for me to want to stack them in single entry. If anybody's considering that, 14% ownership on DK. That's a little more than I'd want to play in a single entry. They could get up to being, like 20% owned over on DK and single entry. FanDuel, they're only 8% owned. We also got a super chat that just came in from Jorge.
Oh, from Jorge. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to run with that Boston Toronto weather?
What are you guys doing with the Boston Toronto game? Weather seems to be bad. What do you guys suggest? Well, let me look at the latest weather map here. So I think to me this is really similar to the Philly game from yesterday, where I tend to be more okay taking on risk, and I just didn't change anything for that game. For today, just because it's my birthday and I have plans, I mentioned that I am only playing one lineup today, and just because it isn't my favorite stack, it's not the team that I ended up going with. So there's definitely risk involved. It's expected to rain for the next 2.5 hours or so in Boston.
It's going to go till about 9 o'clock, 9:15.
Yeah, so it's just going to be, are they willing to wait it out or not? And it's kind of out of our control. There's a window to play if they wait. If they don't want to wait, then the game doesn't play. I would say this: it's more likely to play than not. If you don't want to take on any risk, you could fade it. I don't think there's any guarantees in this game. I know it's a very hedgy answer, but that's kind of what happens with the weather sometimes. I wish I could just firmly tell you guys the game will or will not play. I don't think it's as simple as that in this spot.
No, and I agree with that. So what I'm going to do with the crunches I've already made when I do my next 5-0 formation, which I haven't done yet, I'm just going to take out Boston so that way I don't get one-offs. With them, I'm okay if some came into this other one. It doesn't look like it's very many stacks. I'm not that worried about it. In situations like this, I'm okay playing the stacks and then rolling the dice, because if the whole lineup goes down, whatever. Just if they went out, your pitcher, they got no hit, you just move on to the next day. You just don't worry about it. When you have pieces of them floating around in a situation like this, it can cause some challenges. I'm having challenges speaking, Greg. Can you?
Yeah. Oh my God. What's happening? Is this Emacs finally reached the end? This is the end. One birthday too many. Oh my God. This is terrible. All right. I guess I'm doing the show solo now. RIP Emac. It was a good run for him. He died doing what he loved.
Well, the last of my cough drops were used in another show. I'm going to grab them from the other room. So I'll be.
Okay.
I'll be
well, the
right
show's
back.
over in 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes. All right.
I mean, you could be, if you want, you could just leave and I could close out the show. Also, take some questions.
How about I sit here and you do that anyway?
Well, think about the cliffhanger though, because when's your next show? Is it with me on Saturday?
It's gonna be a moment. It's gonna be a moment.
No,
but won't you come back? Greg, enjoy your birthday, jerk.
But also, is
continued?
Is your next show with me on Saturday?
Yes.
Because I'm just saying, if you walked off right now to get a cough drop and, coughing up, it's bad, he's having trouble breathing, the audience will have to tune in Saturday to see if you survive a cough attack or not. I'm just saying it would be great for ratings. It would be a really good cliffhanger to end the show on.
And I could just quickly click out of Zoom, and then the Zoom screen would get all mucked up and somehow Jordan would appear on camera. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as quick as you can move in your current condition. But if anybody, it doesn't seem like we really have any questions. We also have reached pretty much the end of the show right now. DraftKings down. Is that true? Let me see.
Oh, I hope not.
Let's see. Oh my
Greg is an a-hole. The man's dying and he won't let Emac get a cough drop. No, he encouraged
No.
He was trying
I've done the opposite. I told him to leave. Emac wanted to stay. I told him to leave and get the cough drop. All right. Let's get Emac healthy. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it already, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just one click of the button. It does a whole lot of help for us on the channel, and it's free to you guys. Other than that, Emac is going to be back on Saturday with myself. I haven't looked at the schedule. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. His next show is Saturday. Or will it be? Dun, dun, dun. Nobody knows. Tune in Saturday morning to see did Emac survive his cough attack or not. The only way you're going to find out. Thanks a lot, guys.
Happy birthday, Greg.
So you really can't change those